All right, welcome to Stampscapes Friday Night Live. We're going to do a large version of a composition that I've done a few times over the years, going back a really long time, called The Moon and the Forest Floor. So that involves whatever types of tree trunks you want to use, and a moon in the background, and sometimes I've had like fallen trees or something like that in the foreground. A lot of times I've used bugs in the past or something. But this one's going to be a very large scene. I already have it kind of smudgy, but that's not going to matter with all the different media that we're going to be applying on here. So going to be using some of the Foamies stamps and doing this on a 10 by 16 inch piece here. So the largest version of this composition that I've ever done before. We'll try to add in some dynamic angles in here a little bit more than what I've done in the past too, just because we're dealing with such a large piece of paper. I felt that some kind of, I don't know, different dynamic structure in here in terms of the usage of angles might be interesting. So we'll go with like a slope in here. Maybe I'll go from left to right in here, and then from right to left a little bit. So kind of a slope of something like this. All right, so I need to get my bearings here in terms of how that's going to go. I'm going to be using different scales of trees. I might even use the rubber stamp versions of it. So this is the 3 different sizes. Okay, 2 foamies right here and the rubber version right here. It's hard to believe that this is a small stamp, but in comparison, it really is. So we'll just see how this goes here. Hello, Candy. Good to see you. Yeah, I'm going to work with some of these foamies. I've been doing some small pieces the past couple days in the form of the scraps. So I thought I'd go big. Going big it suddenly takes on a kind of a new meaning these days with the foamies now. Just because they take up so much space, it's just, I don't know, the usage of them, the usage of scale like that, it seems to kind of, I don't know, what's the word, mitigate, or it just, it takes care of, I don't know, a lot of the different issues that you might normally have to consider when doing a scene of this size. It just I don't know. It makes those kind of irrelevant because it's the same kind of impression. I don't know, whatever time than maybe not a quarter page card, but maybe at like a half page card would have, or a full page, 8.5 by 11. All right, so I'm getting that dynamic slope in here, about like so. All right, and we'll go for a little bit of change of scale here with some of this grass, but we just want to get the basics down of this. Okay, so I'm going to be adding this in, then I'm going to be adding in some colors up into my sky. I want to just get the basics of where the background is going to be going and the foundation. So the background is going to be basically the sky, and then the foundation is going to be the grass and everything like that. And then we'll add in the trees after that. The trees are going to be like the easiest thing. They'll be like the largest components, but they'll be like super easy to do when we get to that point here. So hoping my trigger fingers will loosen up soon. Hope they do too. Hello, Linda D. Hello, Nicole. Good to see you. Western Australia. And what time is it out there? How many time zone does Australia have? Does Australia have multiple time zones? I might have asked that before. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go for a little bit of a rule of thirds here. Okay, let's see. Let's go like this. Okay, so this is going to be another slope right back in here. Like about like so. Now, you know, in a forest, there probably, well, there's changes of elevation and whatnot, but we'll make these ones fairly, I don't know, maybe extreme for me, but not too crazy. All right, let's see here. Okay, so the only thing that I'm thinking about, when you get up to this point right here, I just need, if I'm going to use the smaller versions of the trees up here, I just need this slope to reach the bottom of this. So that's what I'm kind of measuring for here. And we're going to do a lot of kind of oscillation of, I don't know, whatever scale here. So it's going like this. We'll have the moon maybe over this way. I don't know if I want to do it central. I could do it central. I'm always doing rule of thirds, but maybe a little bit off to the side like that. I do want some dynamic angles in here. Okay, so this is how I do my planning. It's no harder than just kind of laying things out like so. Okay, so if this one's, I want this, I don't want this one right here, I don't think. So let's put it over here, and let's place this one over here to the side. And then we can have maybe another one right in here, something like this. Could be this size. I do have the tree trunk trio too that could be used, but let's see. Something like this. And there's another one right here. I want to do this little corridor in here too, so I don't know. Maybe I might have to use this one again right here and go larger right here or smaller right here. Okay, I think I have it. I really want this kind of framed up. Oh, I didn't even think about it. This could go in here, like right there. Okay, let's move this one over a little bit. Let's do that. I think that's it right there. There's no right or wrong. I'm just, I don't know. They say that whatever, you know, compositions and groupings of, you know, odds look better. So I just didn't want like 4 main trees. If I'm going to do some trees, I want to do like 5 of the main big tree trunks. Okay. Okay, so that is going to go roughly right here. Okay. This is a Prussian blue. Was that a question there, Linda? You're on daylight saving time. It's darker in the morning and lighter at night. 11:21 a.m. Got it. Got it. Well, good morning to you both. I'm looking to see if I have my my re-inker for this here. I don't think I do. All right, I'm laying down some this Prussian blue. Well, let me just test it out. Yeah, it's a little bit light. Here, I'll just lay some of this down like this in the form of the Prussian blue. And then let's go in and let me add a little bit of this lighter blue into it just for a little bit. Ooh, that one's really dry. Let's see if I re-ink these. Yeah. Okay, so getting a little bit of variation, hopefully. And if I don't get too much of a variation with this form of kind of blending and mixing directly on the stamp, then at least it'll stamp out a little bit juicier. Being that this is going to be somewhat of a focal point in here, but let's mop off the edge so that I can kind of gracefully, hopefully, blend this in with the surrounding area. Maybe I'll use I wasn't going to use the cloud cumulus on this, but I think I might. All right, so let's see. Let me put it a little bit lower on the horizon, like about like this. It's always kind of dramatic when you see that moon rising from, I don't know, some horizon. Just one of those things with sky figures too. We already have the slopes in here, but sometimes it's interesting to kind of skew your sky imagery at a little bit of an angle just to create a little bit of a kind of visual momentum and drama by putting things a little bit skewed. So something that you can always do. I don't skew it so much where I'm going like 90 degrees or something like that with something like this, but you know, I don't know. It might be interesting to kind of play around with that idea one of these days. All right. Ooh, that was pretty bright there. So that was Prussian blue and, oh, that was probably a light blue in that pen that I just used. I think it was a manganese blue, but I probably re-inked it with a light blue because in those different pens like that, watercolor pens, one of the things that you can always do, so watercolor pens are dye-based pens, but you can just open up the reservoirs in the back. And if you know what I mean, if your pen's dry and it you know, I mean, if you're going to toss it out anyways, you can just re-ink it with something similar. You know what I mean? It's going to change the color, yeah, but, you know, it's better than, you know, just tossing the pen away, provided the tips are, you know, still usable. Okay, so that is that. I'm going to have trees, like really dark trees, in front of this moon up here, so the sky isn't going to be, I mean, it's important, but it's not going to be super important in terms of like impression, I don't know, whatever. You don't need to have things blended perfectly in your sky, okay? It's just got, you know, it's going to be really dark up there. I want to have some dramatic kind of shadows being cast from the tree trunks and stuff like that. So that's going to be mainly, you know, that sort of idea in this terrain. Okay, so let's go with the same Prussian blue here. And one of the things on the cloud cumulus, just kind of mop off that area when you're blending it into sources of light, moons, suns, lightnings, anything like that. I have a little arrow, if you can see right there, pointing in the direction. I mean, I can tell, but that's something that one of my customers did so that they know to always kind of point in the direction of their light source, okay? You know what I mean? Because it's, you know, if they're not real familiar with the stamp, that's just a little visual reminder, okay? One of the things is you just kind of wipe off that edge like that. You don't have to, but it makes that transition into the thing, into the imagery that you're blending it in with, go a little bit more graceful, and then you won't have all these kind of rectangle edges more prominent than had you not wiped it off. We have 4 time zones depending on daylight. If you have 4 day, okay, wow. Queensland don't do any. Okay, don't do daylight saving. Queensland and Western Australia, huh? I don't know how many states here don't do daylight savings. Arizona doesn't. I thought the rest of the country did, but I don't know about places like, you know, some of the different states. I don't know what like Idaho's doing. Actually, Idaho might be on Mountain Standard Time. No, I guess, yeah, I guess there. I tend to forget about Mountain Standard Time, but I guess we do have 4 zones here. Well, yeah, I'm not counting like, you know, I guess 5, right, with like Hawaii. I don't understand countries like China. They don't have any time zones. All right, so see this? I'm just kind of building those clouds like that around. I don't know if I'm going to build it out all out here. This area out here is going to just be kind of darkened, okay? This is going to be a little bit more of a darker version than this composition that I've done before, just because I don't want to spend so much time on the coloring process, okay? It's going to be a lot more time than, you know, on my half-page pieces of paper that I've done this composition on before, but, you know, I don't want it to be the equivalent of, you know, whatever, what is that, 8 times the, or no, what, 4 times the amount of time. So I'll show you what I do with that. All right, masking here, down below. Okay, now see this right here? See how those clouds are facing this way, and when the light in is coming from this side, there's that little arrow right there, stamping it like that. Okay. All right, so let's just kind of taper this off a little bit. I'm in California here, and I think we voted to just do without daylight savings, but they're not, you know, I mean, they're not doing it this year, but maybe in the future. Okay, so that is that. Now let's go a little bit more on this side. Yeah. We need a little bit more of a transition here, I think, away from the light source. So the idea is that these clouds are kind of, you know, catching some of the, you know, the lighting from our light source in here. So let's go a decent distance away from that, where we can, transition into darkness. Okay. So this right here, I wipe that portion off where it's going down into that grassy slope. Okay. Let's see, let's just go for a couple extra impressions out here. Okay, there we go. So this is transitioning from darker, more defined, to lighter and just kind of diffused. I don't know if we're going to be able to see that those textures out there at all, but it'll be a little bit of a head start in terms of our addition of tones in here. Hello, Linda B. Good to see you. Oh, that's interesting, Nicole, on Hokusai. Was that print, so whatever views of Mount Fuji, that's what I based my Great Wave on design. This video is probably going to be epic in length and content. Epic in length and content, and therefore maybe the most effective in terms of the most amount of viewers falling asleep during a production too. Some people have said that they've come to, you know, like around if they're watching on like a desktop computer or something like that, they brought like a small pillow, you know, for watching my videos, they said. No, I'm just kidding. But you could. Okay, so that is that. So again, just getting our bearings here, you know, in terms of imagery in here. Okay, I've already kind of forgotten a little bit. All right, now right down in here, let me see how that was going to go, like this. I want one of these trees on this grassy slope, and then this one's going to go like right back up in here, like about like that. We'll need something down in these areas like this, and this one will come down the lowest right around here, I think. Okay, so that being said, we'll have some grassy textures within here. We need something else though, don't we? Let's see. We'll go for a couple extra textures. This is too much grassy, too much of a grassy slope in here. So I knew this just from doing this in the past. having some extra things like rocks or something like that just to break up this monotony of texture. Okay. Supersizing Linda B. Moon in the forest floor scene. 10 by 16 here. Okay, so let's see. Let's get our bearings here again. Okay, so a lot of times trees are growing out of kind of these rocky areas, I find. I think it's because I always wonder that. Why are these large trees growing out of like a small crack in a rock? And I have a feeling because if a seed gets, into like a crack in these rocks or something like that, it has something to anchor onto, during rain and storms and everything like that. It's not getting washed off like a sapling kind of out in the open, which are growing too, but they just have something to grab onto. So I see it all the time out in nature. So let's go like this. We'll go with a rock right down here, and then let me see. I can add this down and add this right over the top if I think this is dense enough, but I don't want to go too extreme with this because I think you can go over the top of it, but if this is stamped out in its full like value black, it's just going to be a little bit too much texture within these open areas right in here. We'll be able to see it. Now I plan on coloring these in after and shading them and all that, but let's be a little bit careful about that right now. Or I don't know. I guess I could stamp some of the trees first. Oh, here, let's get this stamped out right here. Okay, so I think it's going to be, I'm trying to think of sequencing here. When you haven't done these certain compositions before, certain combinations of media, you got to get try to get the basics of the sequencing down. And for me, a lot of the basics of sequencing is just for, to try and, do things as simple as possible so I don't have to do extra things like masking, okay? So it's not like I'm doing something that has to be done, otherwise, you can't do it. It's just, I'm doing it for like simplicity sake. All right, so there's some rocks down there, and let's see. And I don't know, I guess these larger trees, you have to kind of, keep them in mind just because of the sheer scale of it, where, if you're using something this size, you can always move this around a little bit more, but when you're, 9-inch stamp, it's pretty dominant. 9-inch stamps. That was only the Seaside Cove, and when you were doing like full-size pieces or something like that, which was rare. It was like once in a, I don't know, not decade, but I don't know. I'm not doing those things that often, or I haven't done them traditionally very often in the past. Things that size. Okay, here. Okay, so I'm masking off a little bit here. Okay, and this is going to be the grass right down in here. And then let's do one more. So again, it goes down to that kind of grouping of 3 type of thing, maybe? I don't know. I might add more. Okay, so this will be another one right here. Just using, maybe the top third of this, maybe. And then, see, I'm kind of sloping it off like so. And you just overlap things like that. So it's looking like that. So it's giving us a little bit of scale, larger, a little bit, smaller, and then smallest right here. So this is also going back into space like this. And then I have this one here, so it's kind of, everything is kind of leading us to that so far. Just in terms of, I don't know, whatever, visual direction. The clouds are doing the same thing. They're all kind of pointed in towards that moon, like that. And then we'll do the same type of thing, but not so obvious with the trees. You could go like large, smaller, smallest, you know what I mean? But that's a little bit too much there. Unless you really want to emphasize that point there. Like say you have like some little figure standing there, that's, some powerful entity or something like that. You really want to emphasize kind of visual direction, then do something like that. That's why I'm kind of going like this. I'm just flanking this like this, and then we'll have another one out here and another tree over this way. Okay, but as opposed to this and this, like that. You know what I mean? I'm just thinking out loud. Okay, so I'm trying to think of what I need to do here first. It's going to be fairly, not quite monochromatic. I want this blue up top here, and these will be some cooler temperatures down here. But I think I'm going to go greens down here and browns and things like that. You wouldn't see that, in any kind of natural lighting situation. You wouldn't have all that color that's happening down here, barring some kind of artificial lighting that's down here. But you might see it in some kind of like stage production or something like that sort, set directions or set productions and lighting like that. But okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm wondering if I should add in these textures right here first. Let's go ahead and do that, I think. I guess as I do that too, this area up here is really kind of moist. I want that area just to dry out slightly. I'll probably get a lot of smudging, but I don't think it should be a problem with all the coloring and like white paint pen that I'll be using in here. All right, so this is the sedge filler. You can use it for naturally filling in areas, and it can fill in huge amounts of space, gigantic slopes like that. Or you can just use it. It's like the ultimate filler stamp around land objects. So I have my water pattern stamp, which is kind of ideal for filling out, connecting water-based objects, lakeside cabin with, lakeside cove or something like that, lakeside reflections. But this one's the filler stamp that I often use for any kind of grassy terrain. Okay, so this is a huge scene, so I'm going to be using scale in here a lot. You notice I'm not masking off my rocks or anything like that. These are just lighter textures like this, so you don't have to go in and do a lot of masking or really any masking. But there's just so much distance, that this is going to cover because this is such a large scene. So I'm using the larger grass texture here to fill in and build this area in. It's looking a little bit, I wish I had like a really large version of this for these Art Foamies stamp large scale scenes, but see, because you get a little bit of that redundancy in here, but that's where, your coloring and everything like that will take care of all of that. So I'm not really worried about that, but it's kind of nice if I had like a stamp that was like this size that you can just kind of take care of it in whatever, 3 or 4 impressions instead, or use portions of it. So I've never thought about that before because, even on a large 8.5 by 11 scene or something like that, or definitely quarter page, those types of things just aren't going to matter as much, but you see the redundancy over the span of, you know what I mean, 8 inches or something like that more. But again, blending of colors and whatnot. All right, so that is that. I guess we're ready to add in some tone. I have some really juicy areas right in those dark areas still. This is a piece of the semi-gloss cardstock too. Okay, more of the satiny type of finish. Oh, okay, this is huge. I'm gonna start us off. I'm gonna go ahead and heat set this. I normally never do this, but this is going to be a big in-depth scene, so. I don't know if that's the first time I've ever dried a kind of a foundation of dye-based inks before. I don't think I have. I just didn't want to go in here. Now, see, I just re-inked my black Marvy Pad 2, knowing how much black I was going to be using over this whole thing. So that would have been real smudgy looking, and I would have started in here blending all these tones, and it would have been like gray. And sometimes, like I said, I don't bother with doing that most of the time, but I thought sometimes when I do that, it kind of creates kind of a real muddled base coat, and then I spend a lot more time kind of trying to recoup some of the brighter elements on here, which takes a little bit more time if the things are all kind of muddled as my base layer coat. Now, it's going to get that way too anyway because of the amount of ink I'm going to be using on here, but I think it would have been even more muddled if it was, you know, if it wasn't quite as dry. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so I'm going to use, okay, so I'd use like an antique linen distress ink. I have a peach Bellini, which is, it's real similar to, I don't know, it's somewhere in between like antique linen and maybe old paper or something like that. Maybe the peach Bellini has a little bit more orange in it, but they're all Ranger inks, okay? They're nice and thick. You can use a Memento, like a desert sand or something like that. I just happen to have like a bunch of Rangers still of some very light tones, and I think these ones are going to be great for my foundation colors, and plus might as well use them up. This is called Seashells, and Seashells later became renamed as Adirondack Lights, as in very faded. You know, they just changed that to the name of them. They didn't really match, I don't think, with the Adirondack line, but they just found a color in their Adirondack whatever catalog or line that roughly looked like it, because Adirondacks were selling really well, and the Seashells, you know, which were matched with the Sea Brights, which were their normal inks, were not selling well. They didn't have that kind of name recognition, so they changed the name. And then discontinued the entire line of Adirondacks and Adirondack Lights. It's probably because it didn't have, you know, it didn't have Tim, you know, it wasn't like a Tim Holtz kind of branded item. They should call it, Adirondacks by Tim Holtz or something. I don't know. Yeah, probably would have helped it out. Okay, so this is just going to provide a nice light base layer. Okay, I don't, it's not going to be tan down here, okay, but it's going to be greens and, blues. Man, not so much blue, but little accents of blue down here. I might actually use this up in the sky too, because going with a warm kind of base layer up here underneath blues, it just changes the whole feel of it, and it could give the whole scene a little bit more continuity. Hello, Debbie. How's the hand today, Linda? Is that the same? I know it was just yesterday that you told us about, your hand and arm. Probably a little bit of a kind of a little physical therapy on that might help too, right? You can just do some some exercises with it. At one time, I started getting carpal tunnel from making stamps. It was when we were doing printing the imagery on top of bare wood before I moved to labels. But one time, I'd press the stamp into another one like that, along this little guide, okay, that I had on my table, just to get those imprints right. And this hand right here was holding the bare wood that I'm pressing into. So right in here kept taking that pressure. And then one night it was like, there's numbness on my tips of my fingers like that. And it was like the next day I was like on the phone, getting some quotes from some label companies. I said, okay, enough of that. Because we'd be indexing, I don't know, hundreds of stamps every night in wood. Small ones were no problem, it was the larger ones. Okay, so here's what I'm trying to do. The moon is going to be right here, so I want this area in here to be fairly light, okay? This is a light color, so this is going to be okay, but see this lighting kind of coming across in here? I don't want it white, though, but I want it to be kind of lighter, okay? Now, it doesn't have to be exactly, you don't just leave an area like this light and have it dark down here. It looks a little bit unnatural. And, areas are supposed to be kind of sloped. This area might, this isn't necessarily like a slope that just goes nice and even like that. When you look at hills like this could go down here and it could, for all we know, it's like dipping down 10 feet and then coming back over this part right here, okay? So you just kind of vary it. So in other words, this is kind of light in here, but you break it up. And you can break it up like several times if you want to. You can have it oscillate going from light to dark to light, you know what I mean? So I can come across like this. So it just kind of breaks that area up. And that's what I'm doing like all the time. Like in every scene, okay? You just kind of leave an open area like that. And the larger it gets, you just break it up. Unless it's supposed to be like, if this was like a flat concrete area right here, this is sloped right here, but then that's when you don't necessarily break it up. But the terrain's usually moving a little bit or a lot in scenes. Or, there could be clouds overhead too, or something like that, kind of breaking that up. But here, when you're doing large scenes or small scenes too, this little technique here using your re-inker fluids, I mean, it really makes quick work of this. I mean, that's, you know, that's like my lighting scheme already established in, for an enormous scene like this. That's a really gigantic scene, and it didn't take really any time at all relative to the size of it. Okay, so this is some of that ink. I just switched it because you can see where that's getting a little bit smudgy with that black ink, but I'm just going to switch over to this interior right here where it's a little bit more pure still. And I'm going to get some of that color onto my moon. So this moon will be a little bit warmer, and then we'll throw some of this on some of these surrounding clouds. We'll leave a little bit of white in there so that we can use have the use of white in some of our areas. Now going over my blue, it's merging with the blue, so it's looking more green in here. So just be aware of that. And I don't know, if you don't want it all super green, then just don't apply too much of it. But see how, if I didn't dry this, that would have been really, really blended and juicy right there. See that right there? It's still reasonably pure. I mean, I have some of it on there, but some of that blue on here, but it's not too bad because of that heat setting. Okay, so let's see. Let's go out here. Just getting some of that, what is it, tint out that way. All right, but can you see the general lighting scheme of this? Now this whole area is going to be darker right there, but I don't want this to be all green, so I just put a little bit of it down that direction like that. You got the refills with the pads. Didn't know I would need to back then. Yeah, they do. Just about any of the Ranger inks are really good for base coats. Just really, Ranger, and I think every ink company, they're all of the inks are pretty thick, but Ranger has a good selection of really light tones for some of their lines of inks, and light and thick, and bright too, but light in value and thick in viscosity are really good combinations for your base coats because they spread around very easily, being thick, and they're not so dark that they're really fixing you like super firmly into a given hue or something like that. Now this is fairly, I mean, it's not like a super light tone like that. It's like I don't know, whatever, 15% or something like that in terms of light, being 0 and black being 100% or something like that. But it's a good foundation like that. I always wondered what in the world is anyone doing with shadow stamping inks, which was what the seashells were designed for. They were shadow stamping inks, but I never, I mean, people were stamping shadows, yeah, but if they were creating a shadow from something, they were inking it up in full, and then usually just stamping it out again, going for that second impression, and that would be the shadow. I didn't know people that were like, going into their ink pad, stamping it out in something black or something like that. I guess they could have, and then they want a blue shadow or something like that, so they can go into the the seashells, and then offsetting it slightly and getting that shadow in there. It wasn't being done enough, to where, I mean, that's why they discontinued it, because no one was doing that. But I always wondered, what in the world? And I was just praying that they wouldn't discontinue it, those, because I just thought them as like really impractical for other purposes other than other than like base layers, which I would, I don't know, didn't know too many people doing base layer coats on anything except for, the way that I was using them, or anyone else that was following kind of that direction. But all right, now I'm looking for a nice light blue. I thought I had a summer sky here, but maybe that one was out. So I'm looking for, let's see, I need like a salvia blue for up here. Here's the London fog, which is gray. I'm wondering if I should go with that. This area in here might get a little muddled, so I'm wondering if I should just stick to the brighter tones up top here, or if I should go in with like a gray tone, a gray scale. Let me see something. All right, I have like 2 trays of, oh, here's salvia blue right there. It's usually the last thing I grab. Normally I got to check through like 30 of those and I'll come across the one I'm looking for. So we got lucky here. Okay, so this is salvia blue. It's the lightest of the Marvy re-inker blues, okay? Or lightest blue in the Marvy matchables. I think they're sold out of that one. I used to go through this one a lot. Black, we used to go through a ton of. But next to black, I think, well, I don't think, I'm pretty sure that salvia blue was the one color that I used a lot because it was the lightest one of the Marvies. So we'd always have it as a foundation layer for blue tone scenes. So that was all skies and things like that, blue skies and whatnot. So I ordered a ton of those, and I noticed that Marvy was out of them. Being that these are discontinued now too, so keep that in mind. You can get them at, there's this place called like One Stop or something like that online. Not in Australia though, unfortunately. Hello, Crimson Rose. All right, so this is my base layer coat for blue. Okay. See what quick work that makes, just going with your re-inker on whatever your applicator, methodology is, tool. You can do this with a kitchen sponge or something like that as well. Any type of thing like that, a rag, Oh, you're working the metallic colors. Awesome. Well, just keep it in a nice ergonomic motion and then do that, stretch it out after your shoulder and everything. Go do some yoga, after. Stretch out everything. Don't let it creep out, you know what I mean, from wherever it's kind of bothering you. Don't let it kind of creep out into other areas of the body, the shoulder and back and all that type of stuff. Okay, so this blue here is going to be used down in this lower section as well. I really want to get things started. I plan on using some not watercolor, but colored pencils on here as well. But, this is a gigantic piece, so we don't want to, have to do, a huge amount of application with kind of slower media, right? See that little tinges of blue right in here? So I'm adding that into these areas that I've retained some of the white of the paper. So that's why you don't, just kind of fill in everything. I mean, you could if you absolutely know you're not going to be adding anything else in here, like a little accent color or something like that. But, you can always make things darker, but You can't really reclaim just the bare, paper. So just apply accordingly, okay? And if you do get, it's like, oh my God, I lost my lighting here. You know what I mean? Then just make the area around it darker so that the area in there looks lighter. I do it all the time. I do lose some of my value changes sometimes, so I just make the other areas around it darker. You don't have to make it darker right next to it, but sometimes, like say this gets all blue, and it's like, oh my God, I made it a little bit too dark in my lit areas. So you just make other areas around here darker, and then that looks lighter by contrast. Okay, so don't worry about all that. Just adjust accordingly if something like that happens. It's good to go a little bit or a lot further than you intended to, which is better than kind of always holding back in terms of whatever expression, application, etc. I always like people going for it, Maybe not, anything where it's like life and death, though, but better safe than sorry when it comes to that. But when it comes to like scenes or something like that, just go for it. Unless you've been working on something for like 1 week. The same piece. I'm saying that Linda's like, Linda B's got her, big gigantic 11 by 17s, maybe, and those, if you got some kind of like gigantic, kind of application of something potentially, maybe you don't want to, go too much with that. Especially where she sacrificed her body, for that, for those scenes, too big. All right, so this is the Caribbean blue, so going darker up here, okay? So I'm kind of retaining some of those little areas of light in there. And then, like I said, I can, if it's too light later on, I can darken them in. If I'm going to be using colored pencils, I can come into those areas too and make them a little bit more subtle. They don't have to be that, that light or that contrasty. You always lose the light when you work with watercolors. I forget about it, then have to go back with white inks. Yeah. That's why I say you just go for it, I do lose my lights quite often. And then have to, go back to contrast. But that's all kind of part of the process, right? Okay, this area down here, like I said, it's going to go... I want to bring in some greens into this area, even though it is a nighttime scene. I think it looks pretty cool with some brighter green tones in here, but blue is a component of green, so having this down here is going to be, one of those, whatever, needle and threads continuity types of elements between sky and surface, whatever light source and reflected light. It won't look blue down here, though, in other words, okay? Or it shouldn't. This paper's getting kind of damp. It feels like a, like a damp piece of paper, which is kind of interesting. It's always interesting to me using the I think it's more on the semi-glosses. I haven't done it. Probably wouldn't apply so many layers like this on matte. So it's more on the coated semi-glosses, but I can feel it in here. You can feel the weight of the all that moisture that's in here. It's not soaked through. I don't think I ever see that happen, but I could feel it in here, you know, because this isn't it hasn't been it hasn't sat around long enough to kind of evaporate, so you can feel it on there. All right, so that is that. Let's go to... I'm debating on whether or not to go to that Prussian blue. Prussian blue is like really dark. That's the same color that we stamped that in. That area there is just, it's not dark enough to go with that darkness. It's just too much contrast, I think. So I think this blue right here too, this is the number 3 Marvy blue. It's pretty dark, but let's just go with this one. I just used the Caribbean blue, right? Yeah. The Caribbean blue is roughly the same value as light blue, so I might... Light blue would be the one that I normally use, but I don't think I need to do that on this one. The Caribbean blue is kind of a warm version of light blue, so it's the same brightness, but just a little bit warmer. Okay, so let's just go with this one. Blue Marvies is like a, I don't know what it is. It's kind of like a royal blue, something like that. Darker than like a... I suddenly forgot the names of my blues. See, I just lost my cloud there. Because it was so dark, it was creating too much contrast there. Okay. Let's try not to lose these 3 areas of, or definitely not the light around there. But yeah, this one's like a royal blue or something. I guess in its full power, maybe it's like a navy blue. So what are you doing with the metallics then, Linda? Are you using it like for water or something like that? I put away a lot of things that were on my desk, but I've left my a couple of my metallic blues like this. These are these pearlescent inks like this, or these are acrylic paints actually, that I really had fun using on that Art Foamies scene fairly recently. I've had those metallic inks for, I don't know, quite a few years now. And I think I tested it out on one card before I was doing anything with the metallic surfaces, I think. So I was always looking to get a little bit more of a, or a lot more of a reflective type of a quality into the scenes. So I was looking at inks like that. And I was being way too conservative with the inks. I wasn't using enough of them. Because I was thinking just in terms of using it as like a little embellishment. Which I guess I still am, but just maybe a thicker, bolder application of it, though. after using all these other types of papers and things like that that are much, much louder than, you know, any application with these inks, you know, or paints that I would be doing. So I'm using them much more freely, I think, or at least on that first like experiment that I did with those ones a couple, I don't know, whatever it was, like 1 or 2 days ago. Did I use it twice? I can't remember. Okay, so that is that. As far as that's my foundation right here. That's a little bit too light over there, isn't it? We need a little bit more variation. See how much more, how much darker it is over here. So okay, let's go the Prussian blue instead. Just get this going over here. Okay. Ooh, that is really quite dark on there. So this is Prussian blue, but I also have all those other colors of blue on that same paper towel, so it's not quite just the Prussian blue. But you can see what the Prussian blue just added into the mix really does to influence the influence whatever the mixture of all those other colors is. It's just Prussian blue is just super, super dark. It's really, if you like blue tones and whatnot, if they still have Prussian blue that's being sold by Marvy, it's one that I would recommend. You know, I don't know if there's a darker blue out there. There might be. Denim in the Adirondacks used to be pretty dark. I think Prussian blue is darker though. I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone else knows. You can chime in here in terms of like a really deep, rich blue tone. The Prussian blue, to me, too, it was one of those types of inks. I think there's a different chemistry to it, too, because it seemed to me to be thinner than the other ones. Because if you left it on something, like rubber, certain rubber stamps, it would really stain them. You know, talking about the power of the whatever pigment that was used in there. Which is good because, I mean, you know, dye-based inks work by staining, so I don't know, there's a certain power to it over the other inks. I don't know of any other ink, like, say, within the Marvy line that does that. It just, I don't know, there was something different to it. Oh, yeah, it really stains my fingers too. Now, pumice, you know, sponge just takes that right off, but I think I noticed that too. It like penetrated like my pores, you know, more than other inks whenever I used it. Yeah, okay, this might be a little bit too dark down here. This is going to go into black down here too, but I think that's a little bit too bluish of a blue down here. I'll just leave it like that. I'll just leave it for the upper portions right here. But I think that equaled out. It balanced out the left and the right a little bit more, or a lot more. I mean, this is like as dark a blue as there is on the other side. Anything for the scenes, Linda. She sacrificed her body for the scenes, but it was worth it. Back when I was doing a lot of hiking with my hiking group friends, my saying for the photographs was anything for the shot, you know. So I was always telling people, it was never anything like life-threatening or something like that, but I'd always tell people, go, can you go out there and stand like on that, edge, ridge, whatever, like next to like these plummeting areas. when I posted some of my photographs on Facebook, someone said, were those drone shots? I'd say, nope, that was me, taking that shot from that angle of people like on the edges of things. Okay, I am adding in some of this. It's going to be a little bit darker on that outside edge though. Like so. I'm not sure. I'm going to come in here with the tree trunks here pretty soon, but I want to get most of this kind of laid out like this because I don't want to stamp a tree and then have to do, like some streaky kind of motion across the tree trunks because it'll smear them because those ones I want really, really, thick with ink when applied because they're going to have to stamp over the tops of these other objects in here. Hello, Susie. Oh, thanks so much, Susie. You just ordered some of the Pearl-Ex. Awesome. A little bit of bling into our media applications, right? You know what I mean? Anything that's kind of reflective of lighting is always kind of nice. It's having some, I don't know. This represents light, on a scene. This is your light source, and this is reflected light. But white paper, I mean, it's reflective, but when we add in those kind of metallic elements into scenes, it's just even more so. And I really like having all that lighting I always want to make it look as though like light is coming from within the scene. So here's what I'm always mentioning when I'm working with the the metallic types of surfaces, foils, holographics and all that. You get it, they're like mirrors, so you get like a ton of light reflecting back. So on something like this, it's always the absence of media applied in here, and then you get the lighter areas that are reflecting more light. But if you add in those kind of little elements of whatever shimmery types of media or whatnot, it's going to reflect back even more. So that's why I like that. I like light coming from within the pieces out at someone. So it could just be little crystals or something like that. But I don't know. Always just really effective in terms of cards and kind of the representation of light. Okay, so this is a Distress Ink peeled paint. It's greenish tinge, right? And it's, I don't... Now, I know they're making kind of brighter colors within the Distress line these days, but I really like them in terms of adding into the mix because I don't find them to be the original ones to be huge commitments to that, to whatever hue they represent in a super bright way. Now this one's a little bit bright, but it's standing out because it's also kind of a temperature change that we're adding into this. The Caribbean blue is a little bit warm, but this is a very, yellow greenish version. But again, it's kind of an earthy look. That's been freshly applied, so that's going to dull out a little bit in here a lot. So you can see this is kind of like a base layer coat too. And then when I start moving into the brighter tones, those are more, surface oriented in terms of, visual kind of attention and brightness. Okay, so let's see here. Oh, no wonder. There's a piece of like pad or, oh, that's paper towel. I was thinking, what the heck? It looks like I'm rolling across like a pebble or something like that underneath there. I could feel like a tiny pebble underneath my artwork here. It's like that. What was that story about that princess that couldn't sleep because there was a pea or something like that, underneath like 15 mattresses or something like that? I can feel this piece of sand like underneath here. Okay, now we're going into this area here. So again, it's going to be important to retain the light areas. It's like a muddy mess right here, but the black, we have a long way to go in here. The brown tones that I add into grassy areas and black. So again, this is where people that haven't done kind of this type of layering before, they quit because it's like, oh my god, this looks like super ugly. So I always try to point that out during the process here, in these videos. Not that, I don't know, people probably just like scroll ahead, and bypass all this kind of, you know, mid point types of area, things. But keep in mind, how this looks right now. It's like a real cluttered, kind of muddy. I don't know. It's not really a mess, but it looks that way in terms of where it stands like that. There's super harsh kind of transitions of brightness in there, and the coloring and blending just doesn't make sense. Okay. But you just keep working it and build it up, and especially going to black in this case. So this is what I was mentioning to people too. When you're doing things, say, not necessarily this huge scene like this. I mean, the only people that are going to be doing this are, people that are into, landscape stamping or something like that. Not someone doing a quarter page card for the first time. But, would they be layering like this? But when people are first starting off with doing scenic stamping, and they can do this way, but they'll have an area of grass or something like that, a meadow, and they're thinking about, okay, well, what color would that area be? So they're thinking about one color, like, okay, I'm looking for meadow green or something like that in their collection of pads, as opposed to thinking about it in terms of layering. And I get it, too, because if you're not used to kind of building up tones like that, you're not going to be thinking, okay, it's going to be a combination of these 5 colors or something like that, to get variation in there. All right, so that is the distressing. So there's quite a bit of, I don't know, variation in here, I guess, using that one color of distress right there, right over the top of everything, like so. Let's get a little of that up top here. Let's create a little bit more of a transition from sky to surface. Is Pearl X is not being made anymore? Oh, Amazon. Huh. Light from within, Travel Dreamer. Always kind of the goal there. Okay, see this real kind of muddy area right here? So, we'll be blending that into the perimeters here. And I'll show you some different colors that I like using in my grassy areas. Okay, so one of the things that I like using in my grassy areas are my brown tones, things like, walnut stain. Let's see, where am I? Okay, this one right here is one of my favorites, the Marvy number 6 brown. Anytime I'm recommending ink colors to someone, if it's Marvy pads, okay, I recommend the dark brown and the brown. And I think there was a pale orange too, which is similar to like an antique linen or something like that. But I don't know, between the pale orange and the antique linen, I'd usually recommend the antique linen because a lot of people already have a lot of the distress colors anyway. All right, so look at this. You can keep these your ink applicators in like a little Ziploc and use them for future applications, maybe. But little brown tones like this, let's just do some things with walnut stain. I don't know if I necessarily need the walnut stain. I just know that a lot of people have distress inks out there. So anything close to that, it doesn't have to be the walnut stain. If you have a, I don't know, what were some of those other darker kind of brown tones of walnut stain, distress inks? I have a lot of them, but I've just come to start, I just came to use like antique linen and walnut stain because one was kind of lighter and one was darker. A lot of those other ones, when I layered it, they kind of all looked the same anyways, so I just went with one of the lighter ones that I probably had a re-inker for, but old paper was good for that. But let's go with the walnuts. Maybe my walnut stain is a little bit dry here. Do I have a re-inker for that? I don't think I do. Ground espresso is a little bit too dark. Yeah, that one scares me in terms of usage. Do I have ink fear? Well, I don't know if I have ink fear, but there are certain ones. What was that? That blue blueprint. That distress ink. That is a really dark blue. Maybe I should use it on this one. But that one really seems to stain to it. Also, that one also has that kind of chemistry type of thing. Okay, I think my walnut stain's a little bit too, I don't know, it's just a little bit too dry. It's the right value, but it's just a little bit dry. I think my Marvy brown here is like super juicy, I think, because I thought I inked it up pre convention at Arizona. Then I don't remember using it too much. Okay, see that right there? So it doesn't even look like greens or blues anymore, right? It just kind of looks darker, but I think it's a nice dark rich. And I'm going to use green over this too, so I haven't even gotten to the main hue of all of this. This is just all kind of preliminary, but this, to me, it's not, I mean, it really taken, a while to do this, but it's because I'm doing the things that make it easy for me to blend this on. I'm not jumping ahead right into that main hue right, real early on. I'm just kind of building up the tones kind of incrementally, a little bit darker, a little bit darker. So that's where I think it's easier that way. So a lot of times I get this comment all the time. Oh, you make it look so easy. Okay, so I throw in like a lot of intermediate stages with certain things like media so that I'm not jumping ahead, which makes things a little bit more precarious. So it's not just for richness, but you do get the added benefit of the richness, because potentially, if you add in more inks and add in more layers, right? Potentially it can become, I say potentially because, yeah, it can get real muddy at times if you add in too much. But that's where my white media comes into play. The paint pens, the white pigment ink at the end, that type of thing. Those things come into play to kind of remedy, certain types of things that happen. So in terms of ink applications and getting real muddy, it takes care of all that for me. Okay. A little bit more brown, looking more like California here too. Not that this is supposed to be California, but kind of you get that mixed in. If you look at any kind of photographs too of like a meadow or something like that, oftentimes there's kind of like little tinges of brown within, those within the greens. Okay. So look for those. One of the things that you ought to do is sometimes, this is what I sent to someone recently. I only suggest it because they said something just wasn't right in their scene. And the thing that I could tell for them was they weren't a beginning stamper. So one of the things I did was I sent them some links, just some photographs of some meadows, okay, and with grass. And I just said, she was only using green and variations of green, light green, mid green, dark green. I said, look at little tinges in their meadow, and also variations. So, everything was kind of green with a little bit of lighter tones in there, but I just said, put a little bit of shadows in there and have some of those browner elements, and she could do it just right over the top of what she already had. So, like I said, a little bit of an antique linen or something like that. Just, one color would have done it. All right, so that is that. Let's go to some greens here. Probably not that one. Here's a pine green. Oh, I just opened this one right here. I think I had a brand new pad was that one there? Yeah, it might have been. That looks like a brand new pad on top. This is an old thing, but I just switched out my tops are interchangeable here. But here's a jungle green. Yeah, I hardly ever use this one. Well, let's start moving this area down here into the greens. Okay. Okay, this is going to get faster now because we're not really just doing the foundation colors. The foundation colors cover a lot of area. Like this jungle green's going to be, all of, I don't know, 60 seconds of application here maybe. All right, that's that. Pine green. Have fun with the feeding there, Linda D. Let's see. Okay, so the Pearl X, they're on Amazon or eBay. Linda B doesn't do eBay. The old style, you found the old stylus tools. Yeah, sometimes it's on eBay. Yeah, this is my stylus here. This is your God-given stylus tools right here. You have like 3 of them, 5 of them. I don't know. I don't do like stuff with my thumb, but I guess you could. It's mostly my index finger. So I don't know. Yeah, this is your stylus. This is my stylus tool right here. It's like nature's stylus, right? I don't know, kids, kids and like finger painting, that's all they need, right? Maybe I should, at this point in time, maybe I should go in with my the tree trunks just so I can see where my shadows are going to be. It's like I almost forgot about this. I'm doing all this work down here, and it's going to get covered up anyway with those trees. My big question is this is a lot of ink down here. I wonder if I should heat set this. Heat setting all this right here, it's going to look a lot duller looking, after heat set, because this is really moist right now. You can tell from my offhand right here that's holding this down. This is the hand that gets all the ink on it. I guess I don't know. I guess I'm getting a little bit of ink on here too, but it's my offhand right here. But if you're just using Marvy inks, it doesn't dry too dull. But if you have all these other brands of inks like this, like Ranger, it dries dull. But you just spray seal it and you're fine. We're fine. But not just not just any plain old paper towels, Crimson Rose. These are the what is it? The life-changing blending towels here. I was joking with people that that's what they said about those, those makeup brushes. Aren't those makeup brushes? No, these ones are like different. They're like denser or something like that. Which they might be a dense makeup brush, but they're still makeup brushes. Nothing against those, you know. All right, so this is the green. Look how bright green that is right there. But see, I like that look in here. You know what I mean? In terms of just the variation, right? Oh, this is bottle green right here. I thought that was the number 4 green. Okay. Whew. That is the largest. That might be the largest slope of grass I have ever done. Anytime I'm working with the larger kind of, close to tabloid, I did cut off an inch off the length and width just so I can mat this on something else, on another piece of white. A lot of it is going to be the first time, or the largest of something for me. Okay, so let's get to some of the impressions here. Should I add that? I guess I can do my vignette over the tops of the trees later. Okay, so let's get to what we were going to get to here. If I can remember where all these different components were going to go in here. So this tree is going to go in here. Maybe I'll mask off some of this grass here, or I can have it coming right from those rocks like that. That'll just make it up to that top of that. This is a 9-inch tree, by the way. Let's go like something like that. Okay, so I was going to use dye-based inks, but now that this is really sopping wet, you can kind of tell, can't you? This is really still moist here. I'm just going to go with the thick ink right here with the hybrid. If you're going to go with a dye-based ink right over the top of this, maybe heat set or something like that, or just let it set up for half an hour or something like that. Let it air dry. Go make a, whatever, dinner, whatever. Let it air dry. But I'm just going to go straight on with the hybrid ink right here, just because it's thicker, and the dye-based inks are thinner, so it should apply right over the top of it without any problem, I would think. Okay, so let's go for a little bit more of an irregular base, because see that, those little clumpy grass like that has more of an irregular base to it. Okay, so let's see. Now a lot of that's going to be showing through, but we're going to darken the trunks and everything like that too. But that's better than stamping out the trunks first and then having to mask all this off and, to work all these colors around it. That would just take, forever. So it's better to do it this way, I think, in terms of time. Vintage photo. I think I might have that one, Travel Dream. I'm not sure. I have a couple other distressings that I ran out of the ink for, but then I just, Like I said, I just came to start using the walnut. Is it walnut stain or walnut ink? I used to like walnut inks too, just in terms of artwork. I have like a walnut ink jar for dipping into. Look at all that. You really see that green through there, but we're going to color all this right here. Okay, and this was going to go, I think, does anyone remember what we were going to do? I'm joking. Okay, let me see. Tree right here, and then like that, I think. I think that was the general idea. That one might need to be moved over here a little bit, like about like so. Like that, and then this was going to go here. We're trying to create this little corridor in here. Like that. Okay, something like that. Okay. Okay, I guess I might as well stamp this one out because this one's like still moist, right? Okay. Where's my trunk base mask? Uh-oh. I think yeah. My paper underneath my scene here is a little bit uneven. These scenes are so huge. Or did it? I don't know. Maybe the foamy is... Okay, the foamy has no problem stamping over that. My paper underneath here was, like at a ledge, there's like 15 pieces of paper right here. And the top portion was like that, but the foamy is, it's flexible, so it just bent right over that ridge with no problem. Here, but I have this one coming out, the rubber one, so let me even this out right here. Okay, there we go. I might add in another one of these too, like right over here. And then I was going to add that smaller one right up through there. All right. Okay, and let's frame this off a little bit more. Let's go with this one right here. I wasn't going to do this one, but I think it'll bring a little bit more firm framing into the mix. Let's go a little bit higher like that and go with this one right over here. Okay, something like that. That's a big horizon in there, so I'm going to make these trees up here a little bit greenish in tinge, and then we'll add in some browns into them, okay? So it'll be like mossy covered trees or something of that sort. But that makes quick work of a big portion of the composition here when you're using such huge stamps like that. Okay, let's see. Let's go like this right here. This black hybrid pad is so juicy. I've never re-inked it. Which also means I haven't used it too much either, but it sure works well on these. Okay, go like that. This one will be behind this tree a little bit. Okay. And I wonder if I should go with this smaller one here, if I should use the larger one. I might use the larger one here instead and bring this down a little bit lower. I think I'm going to do that. I just did a re-evaluation here just because I might want to reiterate that. And also the rubber stamp version of it, it might be too detailed in relation to these other ones, okay? Because the rubber stamp version holds more detail and it might look off unless I added that other one in like another time, you know, the rubber stamp version of it, but there's not really room for it in here. All right. It's interesting stamping these foamies out because when's the last time you stamped into one of your stamps and you're pressing into your stamp, you know, where it's like a cushion? All right, so I think that is effective in terms of filling that area out like so. All right, now we're gonna blend all of this in, but let's do some heat setting on here because these inks are really, really thick. And if I try to add in these green tones and bring them up this way, you know, it's going to get really kind of, it's going to really smear over everything, I think. Where that vintage photo is that? That's lighter than the walnut stain, right? All right. Now we're going to put other things on this forest floor too. Okay, I'm going to wait for that until a little bit later. But let's heat set this. This is feeling really, really damp at this point in time, especially down in this lower section. It's almost like embossing with that. I can see it kind of changing instead of getting, like embossing when you're doing it. It's getting kind of that glossy, kind of raised surface. This one's went from kind of glossy to a matte, you know, color. All right, so let's see here. Let's bring in some of the greenish tinges here. And let's try to obscure slowly some of that, that delineation between surface and sky in here. Coming together, CM, slowly but surely. I think it's coming together fairly quickly. I mean, for a tabloid size, piece right here, just an enormous scene, relatively speaking, and not huge in terms of some other projects that some people do. It's certainly not with I think the Art Foamy crowd they're probably used to doing things on the whatever canvases, panels, and everything. So, but for us card makers, yeah, this is big. Although we're going bigger these days, for other whatever compositional possibilities, Linda B and Jeannie. I don't know. How many of you work on? Does anyone here work on very many like full page pieces? And if you do, I'm kind of curious to know what percentage of your pieces do you think you do in full page? Like for me, like full page, like 8.5 by 11 pieces. Up until recently, we're probably, I don't know, 1% of all scenes that I did. I'd say up until about maybe a year and a half ago or something like that. And maybe it's still really small. I don't know. Things are getting bigger though, with these larger stamps and also the different types of media too. The foils and things like that. It just feels like going larger is I don't know. It's easier to do while making whatever statement that we want to make. Okay, so with the foils, with these stamps, they're just naturally larger, so the stamping portion of it goes much faster. And you can do other things. You can do like large pieces like this, where before, my smaller tree was this big. You know what I mean? They'd all have to be up at the top like that. But things like foils and things like that already have all of the colors and dynamics just inherently in the paper itself, so I don't have to do all that coloring, and if it's starry holographic foil, I'm not going to be adding in, tons of different colors into it, where that foil is, so I don't have to worry about any of that. Or not worried, I don't have to consider it, because it's already, all of that's already done, so like I said, it just makes it really easy to do those pieces. I'm just doing basically the black and white portion of the card. Or, colored pencils a little bit too, some, on the pieces, some of the pieces. But yeah, I don't know, it's so much easier doing large pieces these days. Not that it was hard before, but there's just more area to fill in, on a white piece of paper. Okay, so as I'm doing this, I'm adding a little bit of this tone right at the base too, where I can see where the shadows are going to be cast. Okay. All right. And I see on the Art Foamies versions of these stamps too, there's less detailing in the smaller sections, okay, than the rubber stamp version. So because of that, they're more open in the areas. So open areas on the smaller stamp are going to be much more condensed. And then there's more of the little dots in there that you can get with rubber stamps. So that visual between the green grass and the blue sky it's more distinct on here. That's why I'm, you just, so, so for me, the solution is you just go back in and just fill it in with some more tone like this. Which is no big deal, It's the other side of, having a large stamp like this is going to make that big, that gigantic statement like that, visual statement. All right, so that was the green. Let's go with the bottle green too on here. I wasn't going to do that one, but let's go ahead and do that, and then I'll go into the brown tones. Okay, so what was that color again with the distress that everyone likes? Vintage. Okay, so the vintage photo, it's more yellowish undertones, just like an old. Maybe I need to get that one because if it's a little bit warmer than the walnut stain, sometimes I want that. I want that kind of warm tinge on there. Maybe I need to look at that one. Maybe instead of getting my like walnut stain or something like that, or a re-inker for my antique linen, I'll take a look at that that vintage photo. I might have, like I said, I might have the pad for that vintage photo that just got dried out. So I just edited it out of my lineup of the colors I was using. Just because, when used as a base coat, you don't need too many different, you don't need a huge array of tones. If I was using it for other things though, then yeah, I'd have a much wider array of colors that I keep on hand at all times. All right, my paper's getting really super saturated again. But see, the lighting is coming from here, so the left side of these trees on the left side of the card are going to be left side shaded, and the opposite on this side right here, so right side shading. Okay, now I don't want these like bright green trees or anything like that, but again, this is just a foundation for the brown tones that I'm going to add right over the top of it. I was planning on using some colored pencils on those trees, but I don't think I'm going to need to. We might get a lot of the color just right inherently in with the dye-based inks. I thought I'd need to go in with the colored pencils. Maybe the colored pencils be used for a little bit more detailing, like with black or something like that. Okay, there we go. Or also the shadows might be good with the colored pencils too. Like right in here, you know what I mean? This gets a little bit awkward, getting in, some of that. So I think this area in here is a perfect place to use, kind of a finer tipped, whatever tool for those areas in there. And again, since we're working with, or, to get a little tinge of color on that moon, you know what I mean? Instead of going with wet ink in here and kind of, have it be a little bit more of a precarious thing, we have all kinds of different hues, within the colored pencil lineup. So, I think it'd just be easier using those. Okay, so we're going back to the brown here, and we'll add this into here. It's giving that green a little bit more of a warmish looking tinge. It's not so quite so green. Still green, but... And then we'll go into it with the dark brown and black into these. Okay. We still get some of that really deep, kind of cloudy looking texture showing through these trunks where I stamped over it, but it's getting a little bit more kind of obscured the darker we go with it. And then, like I said, I'm going to use other things like leaves and things like that, you know, around these tree trunks to kind of soften up the edges too, and to fill out the area more. So that will help too. I like to go with a nice dark base for my trunks as well. Or any type of situation where objects are sitting within something, you know, water, grass, whatever. Not so much with snow because snow's so light and reflective, but just about anything else. You know, fairly dark in there, and see it's kind of starting to sit in there, and we start to see these shadows being cast by that. So roughly, if you don't know kind of how to do your shadows, kind of the rough idea of it, you know, just here's your light right here. So you can do your shadows coming from that angle if you want. I don't know if you want to go with the center like this. I guess it would be coming out more this way. Then I have this going like this where it looks like the lighting is coming more from right over here, but I don't want to go too vertical with this shadow, so maybe I'll go like this right here. So go like this a little bit. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be a definitive line like it's on like concrete, but that's kind of the general gist of it. Okay, that's the angle right here, okay? And then see right over here, see it's more vertical, but the more you move away from it, it's like that, okay? I'm going like that. But like I said, this is not supposed to be like a flat concrete or something like this. This is moving grass, so you can kind of alter it a little bit. So instead of a line going like that, you have it go like, you have it loop down, or you know what I mean? Something like, or it can go here, then it can go like a little loop. But that's just the general gist of the, you know, the directional lighting right here. That, see, this whole area right here could be, you know, darker like that. But use that as a guide if you don't know what to, you know, to do, but don't be kind of like, you know, you don't want to be like enslaved to that, whatever, that perspective on the shadows like that, okay? That's not really the word, but like enslaved to it. But sometimes, you know, sometimes people just, you know, they don't break out of that type of thing, and I think it looks okay, but it kind of flattens out the surface a little bit. If it's in grass or something like that, or snow, you know, where you have a changing terrain, okay? Okay, so this is the dark brown. See this dark brown right here? It's really kind of doing the trick here. And then we'll go to black, so it's, you know, all those other colors are just kind of preliminary. I mean, you can move into the black much earlier if you want to. It doesn't have to be as long of a process like this, but I just think it looks richer too, having all those colors underneath there. So see all that richness right within that space right there? Okay, but I mean, see, this is what this brown looks like just on its own, right? But it's kind of glowing in here. Because it's transparent, you have all those other colors underneath it, so it's like these glazes of colors that you're layering onto your piece. And with the you know, the coating on this paper, it's a semi-gloss, so it's semi-coated, you know, it's not glossy or anything like that, but Yeah, it's this paper is coated enough where it can take this amount of layering of media, no problem. If we're doing it something like on a matte paper that's not coated, it might start getting muddy in here and kind of super saturated with inks. But this is no problem for it. Let's see, pan pastels are fast and easy. Pan pastels are fantastic. Let's see, lots of area to cover. I'll be done. 8.5, two 8.5 by 11. I knew someone. It seems like when people move to like larger formats, they often stay. I knew a teacher that was in Connecticut. Oh my gosh, I forgot her name, but I have a photograph in the gallery section of all of her. It covered it like two walls, 8.5 by 11s from floor to ceiling. I always nicknamed it. I always told her. I think her name was Peg something. Was it Peg Napier? But there's this photograph of it. But when she taught at a store out in Connecticut, but her personal scenes were all 8.5 by 11. Then she started teaching like specific scenes that they would do. So in a class, it was almost like those painting classes where you paint a specific thing. But her classes, and a lot of her personal scenes became 8.5 by 11. Now I don't find that, I don't think that's going to happen with me just going like big and then I'm going to stay there, because I still like doing like small scenes too, like those little scrap cards like in this past week. I still haven't done those inchies though. Oops, see that right there? That gray, or that dark brown. That doesn't look good. Let's stick with the colored pencils in this area right here. Yeah, Crimson Riz, I'm using the semi-gloss paper just so that I can use the colored pencils on here if I want to. So you can use things like pan pastels in here too. I would, pan pastels, I mean, you can do the whole thing in pan pastels too, but you can also use pan pastels on this paper, but you just can't layer it quite as much because it's sealed off and it's not any tooth to it like a matte paper would have. Do full pages only in your art journal. Got it. Yeah, journaling is cool for larger pieces. Okay, Crimson Rose, I do have glossy 11 by 17, but I'm using the semi-gloss for a reason too, because a lot of people just can't find, especially in other countries, glossy cardstock. Even just finding white glossy cardstock's become a real challenge in some areas. Whereas before, you used to be able to find that at any stamp store, scrapbook store would probably carry it. I don't know, they just knew where to get it. Maybe they were kind of, they were industry too, commercial, so they can get it from those states. Where in a lot of other countries, the only people that are buying, like just glossy cardstock's just not available just to the public. Now that you don't have a lot of stores around with their business licenses to go into and buy glossy cardstock, like larger sizes of it too. It's just getting harder to find, which came as a surprise to me over this last year and a half when I tried to sourcing it for people. I have found places that sell it, but okay, that being said, I'm finding that the semi-gloss, if you enter semi-gloss cardstock into Amazon or Google or whatever, a lot more types come up in terms of availability for that. Okay, so that was the brown there. Let's go to black. My black Marvy pad is really super juicy right now, so I need to be a little bit careful about that because I want to go into it. When I start applying it, I want to apply it in kind of more gradations of like a 50% gray or something like that. So I don't want to go in with a sopping wet, black, applicator right here. Vintage or Vito. Vito's become a go-to for you, travel dreamer. Who's Vito? Lots of area to cover on this one. Let's see. Coated matte. So yeah, so the coated matte is like a semi-gloss, right, Linda? Oh, you're using a coated matte. So you're using a matte. Okay, but yeah, it's like like a cardstock matte then. Okay, for your pastels. Yeah, that's perfect for that. Blending brushes. I have used blending brushes for certain things, Travel Dreamer. I thought it was pretty good for like the black on my cards if I was using it like if I was adding that vignette type of thing. But for blending brushes for me, if I'm adding a lot of color to something, which is mostly what I'm doing in terms of getting real saturated coatings, I find the blending brushes like took me forever to use. First of all, because the blending brushes, if you're talking about the makeup style, the toothbrush style makeup brushes, none of them are, they're synthetic fibers. So synthetic fibers by nature wick moisture, so they repel moisture, because if it's those brushes you're talking about, they're designed for dry media, which is makeup, right? So in theory, they kind of work opposite of what I'm going for. But I do like them for, the idea of them for at least, thinner applications, like lighter applications, because they're not going to have so much ink in them. So if you were doing something where you just want a light coating on something, I thought they worked really good for that. Or they gave like a real feathered type of application on the perimeter, like with black. So instead of going with something like this, it's going to be fairly solid. I thought they gave a really nice touch to those, the darkest of edges in pieces. And I don't know, I have that makeup brush somewhere. I couldn't find it. It's probably right on my desk somewhere in one of my containers. I have like actually five of these types of things. It's probably sitting in one of these around here somewhere. That's good. Oh, this is my tumbled glass. I was thinking, what is this one? Oh, there is some still in there. I need to get several re-inkers for things that have run out. I do like that tumbled glass distress ink as well. Speaking of favorite distress inks. Okay, so this is black that's been adding on. Look at the black, the difference that black is making right here on those trees on the right-hand side. So I'll do the same thing right here too. Okay, but we'll shade it on the left-hand side of those trees like that. Now, like I said, you don't have to go through so many layers like this, but I just figured if I'm doing this moon in the forest floor scene, and I'm doing it in this largest kind of format like this, I figured I'm gonna just take my time and, really kind of develop it through, a really strong, I don't know, whatever version of it with, a lot of different richness in there. Because I might not do it again, so, I'll do a different composition, but maybe not this one. So I'm really taking my time here on this one. I really want to make these trees look nice and rich, and, the surface area down there. So so that shading on that one right there. So it's kind of matching over there. Maybe go a little bit darker on the base here. It's not building up too much because it's so wet down here. So I really have to kind of dab it. You kind of streak on if you want a little bit of a thinner application of media, and dab so you're building up little beads of ink if you want to go darker. Okay. these rocks down here. Let's put in a little bit more darkness down here and give them a stronger base. Here's this one tree right here that's barely visible, but it's kind of acting as a framing device for this open area right over here. Okay, now it just occurred to me, I wasn't even looking at it, but my sky up here needs to get kind of capped off a little bit more. I might come into tree leaves though. Okay, I was going to put a little bit of a extra tone up here, but let's maybe do that with like overhanging tree limbs or something like that instead. So I don't want to muddy that over too much if it's going to be done with imagery instead. But I like these little passages like right in between trees like that. I think that's really fun. Like right in here, you know, you have some lighting coming through it. If I wanted to, if this was a narrow kind of composition like this, you know, you can put even like a little figure up there or something like that, looking at the moon or something. So you want these areas to kind of work on their own too, being that they're so large, you know, like that. Or even just, you know, if this was smaller down here, you know, and it was cut off like this, you know what I mean? Kind of, if they can work in smaller segments as well as the larger, all the better. Okay, well, I can add more of this, but let's move on to some filler types of imagery now. And then we'll come into it with some little touches. Like I said, I don't know how much colored pencils are going to show in here. God, this is like having a piece of canvas or something like that. This is kind of cool when you wrap it around like this. It looks more three-dimensional like this. It's just so huge too, like that. Let's see what it looks like now, like that. Not like that, but. All right. Okay, this is what I was talking about up here. I might have some of these overhanging leaves coming right in here. Okay. I guess let's stick with the this worked really well in terms of darkness here. Vintage photos become the go-to for you, travel dreamer. That is cool. It's always nice having kind of those go-to media, you know what I mean? Yeah, with the Art Foamies, it really makes quick work of these types of things. Now, if I was doing this on like I can do this scene like this. I wish that now I wish that those vinyls, I guess some of those vinyls do come in a roll. I don't know if I want to get into that, but I was thinking it would be kind of nice to have like a sheet of 11 by 17 printable vinyl to do something on. Okay, now I'm over inking this because again, I can't tell when these things are inked up. It's really difficult to tell. It's like way over inked when I'm always finding with this though, and I can probably go for like 3 or 4 impressions if I wanted to, but a lot of times I don't want to take the chance. You know, because a lot of times when I've been doing these scenes, I've been doing like really large versions of it, so I don't want to stamp something out and it's like, oh, it's stamped out in a, you know, 50% gray or something like that rather than black. If I was expecting black or hoping for it. Okay, now when I'm doing like multiples of this, I just want to get some areas a little bit denser. So I'm making this area a little bit denser right here to do that framing up there that I would have done in like a tonal vignette instead. Okay. Now these trees right here, I've used them as like the gigantic, you know, whatever, 100-foot sequoias before, but now this is not representing that, you know. They're representing just, you know, whatever regular sized trees. Large ones, you know, these are, you know, trunks here, but, you know, not like these towering types of things. I guess they could be still if I put a little person like that, but, you know, these gigantic sequoias don't really grow in that, you know, type of like grassy terrain like that because they're blocking out, you know, a lot of the light. Not that, you know, not that we can't do that, but I know I'm just not thinking that way. I'm thinking about putting like a deer in here or something like that. Okay, I think I just one more impression right here would have been good with that. Coming down in this area. Let me hold this down a little bit longer because that's really super wet on that side of that trunk. One good thing about doing these huge pieces with these huge stamps is that you have all this stuff all the way around you, and it's kind of nice to be able to, okay, I'm done with that. I can put this on the, you know, get this off of my work area. Kind of finding enough workspace is like the big issue with doing these big pieces like this. Okay, so that kind of covered that area up top like that. Now we'll add in these other elements down here and bring, you know, a little bit more variation to these areas. You know, I'm thinking about doing, you know, the colored pencils first, but a lot of times the imagery just doesn't stick to that wax as well. You know, the impressions, so maybe it's better to do the impressions down here first, I guess, right? All right, and then we'll just put the wax over the top of it as needed. Wax meaning the colored pencils. Okay. I need to be careful up here. That ink is really wet. This is where I start feeling like I get like these feelings like I'm holding a piece of canvas again. Not that canvases that we're working on kind of back in school, you know, were like floppy like this, but it's just like this wet, you know. Serves as like, maybe it was like, you know, the feeling of working on a piece of, I don't know, like watercolor painting or something like that, where you're having to take it over to the drying rack or something. You know, this is like so like moist right here. Okay, so those are some foreground elements of those reeds right there, but what we do is we also bring some of that into the background. I think I'm going to use the smaller version of that, just because we have it. I could use the larger version of it again, but let's push depth a little bit more. I don't know if I'll go with the smallest reeds. It might get a little bit too redundant in here to have like so much of it, but what you do is you just kind of mask off the bottom portion, and if the reeds are coming from behind the you know, the tree, then just mask it off on two different sides like this and this, and then you can have some of those reeds coming up from behind there. So we'll do a little bit of both. Let's see. So again, you're just masking that off, just like we did with the, you know, the trunks, the tree trunks when we stamped those out. And just get a little bit more of a varied base on there. And then you can come down here too. So it's like, you know, a little bit varied in terms of the grassy area. Come back up in here. And let's put some of these reeds coming from behind the tree, so you have some in front and behind. So we'll just mask that off instead and do this. And that'll be the technique that I'll use like throughout this area. It stands out a little bit too much, and we need to anchor it down with some shadows again. But it softens up the base areas like that when you stamp some kind of, you know, foliage or something like that at the, you know, around the base of things. These ones right here are starting to blur out a little bit because I've stamped those ones into this really wet area. So I don't really care if it, you know, if it blurs out a little bit or not. I don't want them getting completely blurry, but they should be fine. All right, so we have that now. Okay, and like I said, again, a little bit of anchoring down with some additional shadow work around those reeds will kind of mellow those out a little bit, where it gets a little bit too textured right in there. I'm going to do that with the colored pencils, though. It's going to be so much easier with those to get exactly where I want them to go. All right. This is the deer stamp. I think I want to go with something smaller, though, up on the horizon. A ridge, maybe. The smaller version of it like that. That'd be kind of interesting, right in front of the moon, wouldn't it? Like that. It's definitely kind of a leading eye type of thing right there. If I go right to that and I put it right in front of that light area on the moon. All right, let me show you what's happening here with that base and everything like that. Really super wet up here. Okay. And see my trunks right there? See how glistening? Everything is like really moist on this right now. There's so much media that's been applied to it. I guess if I go with the colored pencils, I better dry things off again. Let's see. Debbie said, I need to Sparky seal it. Pan pastels, then first stamped on top of it. I love the look of pan pastels. Oh, spray seal it, yeah. Blending brushes on 11 by 17, Linda B was saying. I tend to save the blending brushes for glossy cards. Yeah. Don't use the blending brushes on your 11 by 17s with your hand and arm there, Linda. Too much work. Extra dark pan pastels to try. I need to get some pan pastels. I love the look of what I've seen people do with those. Hello, Froggy Fresh. How's the cold going? Cold, right? Some are definitely better than others in terms of pan pastels. Well, which ones are the best? Or which one's the best value, I should say. Good night, Debbie, when you hit the hay there. Hello, Jeannie. Are you gonna want? Yeah. Well, the one thing about watching this entire thing is that, definitely on these videos, it's nice to be able to just like scroll ahead. And this one, you might have to like scroll ahead like an hour at a time. I wasn't quite sure how far I was going to get with this one, but the one thing about this is that I do kind of like working in a slightly damp surface, because the inks blend just so much easier, when things are a little bit damp in terms of wet on kind of damp, okay? So it is kind of beneficial just to do it all together. Now, like the colored pencil portion of it, you can just do whenever. But definitely the wet on kind of damp is kind of nice to just kind of get all of that established, right when you're doing it. All right, let's see here. I am going in with this deer here. And this is grass that deer is going to be standing in, so I'm going to be wiping off some of the feet area. Not completely, but just kind of wipe off some of it. Have some of it stamp out a little bit lighter. I don't know, maybe I wiped off all of it there. But if there's a little bit of residual area down then it looks like they're standing in something. Even water, have a little bit of that, their feet showing. I mean, you could also mask off, but with small little objects like this, I just find it easier just to wipe off the, the subject and just stamp it right in there. Because when you put like a paper towel down there, sometimes, you know what I mean, it doesn't get right to that paper towel. So sometimes it cuts off more of their the feet than, what I really want in there. All right, so there's our little subject matter. It's like a nice stage for, our eventual whatever focal point in there. And that was the deer silhouette small, I think. 420, I think, B. This one right here, you can do like those large scenes. I need to do like I don't know, like a scene sometime, like a Find Waldo thing. We've been doing these like the monster maps, and like Linda B's done the the Christmas one right here. But I want to do like just a scenario where there's like a lake over here and someone's fishing, and the deer over here, and there's people hiking over here, and there's like a mountain over here, and maybe people are climbing up there, and like a little cave over here, kind of like what I mean, like it'd be a national park map or something like that, not where everything's in walking distance, but national parks, you're probably talking about whatever. Sometimes it's 100 miles from top to bottom, and some of those gigantic national parks, but. Okay, so let's do some the drying down here. All these reeds are really dry right now. I mean, they're wet. I was a little worried I was going to burn myself right there. Yeah. Is it? I wanted to. I don't know. I'm not. I'm going to let these top portions, these top elements up here, dry, just air dry. But this bottom portions down here, I really want to dry so I can go in there with the colored pencils and do my fine tuning in here. So, all right, let's see how this goes. Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to have to dry those out. Maybe during this broadcast here, if I just stick with it and finish this piece right here. But okay, so the same, kind of rough color scheme that I was using in this area down here. It's the browns and the greens. I don't need to use every one of these here, but I'll just grab some that are kind of related to it, and then I'll just adjust accordingly. All right, so some of these areas in here, they're just a little bit too rough, so we want to bring these together a little bit more. And sometimes it's just easier to do it with the colored pencils, or if you had pan pastels, that'd be really fantastic to add it in there. I don't, but should get some of those eventually. So let's see what we can do about blending now. Okay, so I'm going to start light and work darker. Okay, so like areas like right in here where there's this harsh line like that. Okay, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to go over that whole area like this. Okay, I'll come into that area, but hopefully, I don't know, you can see. Can you see that right there, where this is now not so white up here? So I'm cutting down the contrast between this and the area. Up top, I'll keep in mind the shadow structuring in here too. But see, this is like going on, and I can bring in this little, targeted warmer tinge in here. I don't want it like that, but I'll go back over it with a darker tone in here too. But I can really control the amount of whatever pigment that's being applied with a colored pencil over, wet, thick paper towel in there. Sometimes the brightest colors are in the shadows, so you can come into your shadow area and really layer some tones. It's kind of hard to tell on this one, like right here, how the colors are going to look after I spray seal it. Everything got really flat looking down here, okay? So I have a feeling that after I spray seal it, it'll look quite a bit different. Like these areas down here, when you go over the tops of these, this hybrid ink right here, it dries really flat looking, okay? You can tell, here's the moist one up here with those leaves, and here, this area down here is just with that. So it'll change probably when spray sealed. So just keep that in mind too. I'm not exactly sure how it'll change though. I think the colored pencils are what they, what you see is what you get with those. But on some of these areas, there'll be some variation. So if you want things darker, you know what I mean? Just spray sealant should take care of that. I think spray sealing this right in here, it'll be as dark as these wet leaves look right there, I think. What have you been stamping, Jeannie? What size piece were you doing, or did you mention that later on? They make a blender brush that looks like a hockey puck with a handle on top. That's interesting. I like that idea. What is the fabric that's used on that brush? But that's a really good idea. That, to me, sounds like a really good ergonomic applicator like that. That that to me sounds like one of the better ideas that I've heard. I haven't seen it, but I just like that idea because this is if you anything that employs kind of the natural motion of the hand, the better. The maps are your thing, Linda. You've mastered those. You mastered it back in the the Halloween one, but the latest ones are just fantastic too. Oh, so the holiday map too. That'd be interesting too. If you're just talking about a general holiday map too, so you can go with you can put something in some area, but then you can also put the tropical in there, with the pines or something like that. It could be like a little, yeah, like a vacation thing too. I hadn't really thought about that before. Yeah, and then you can have people go through like snow or something like that. Ah. See, these types of things like that, it blasts things wide open in terms of the possibilities, when we're talking about using scale like that. We can have all these different what do you call it? Narratives. You can have all these different narratives that open up to us with these larger pieces. Okay, so this green right here, I think this green is really adding quite a bit to the pieces. I didn't think I'd use so much of this lighter green, but I really like this kind of glowing look in here. Okay. Let me adjust my exposure here a little bit. Okay. There we go. Let me see if that looks okay. That's more of what I'm looking at right here. I was a little overexposed with my camera, starting off with a white piece of paper. Okay, I'm adding in some of this little touches of this green into my trees as well. A little bit of mossy covered trunks. Just adding a little bit of brightness and warmth into the elements. It'd be interesting to do the scene just like in snow too, you know. If we did in snow, maybe I should do that. Snow, I mean, that would have been easy because then on that removed like I don't know 40 minutes of my meadow work in there with all those different colors, because it would be more minimal. It'd probably just be like just a few variations of blue and very light ones. I wouldn't move into the darker ones. You can do this exact same maybe not with the leaves up here, in a snow scene, but it'd be very similar. Okay, I want to add a little bit of a warmth up in that moon too. I'll do that with something, I don't know. Oh, look at this. I never use this one. What is this? Sand. Something like that. You can tell because it's a smaller pencil, so I've used it at some point in time, but it's like absolutely sharpened. So let's add a little tinge of color onto this. Because it makes sense that the light source would be casting, warmth throughout here. I mean, it's no moon that I've ever seen, but like I said, artistic liberties. And we'll add some of this into these areas up here too. And we'll bring some of that warmth into these clouds that are showing. It'd be interesting now when I'm thinking about it, doing a moonlit scene in a snowy area and then having those light beams coming across like in here, like they're a misty kind of wintry type of a scenario. I don't know, maybe that would have been better. All right, is this the same green that I used? Yeah, okay. No, I think, or is it? All right, let's put that away. I don't want to keep using that one. Let's move on here. A little bit of a light green, kind of not as warm here. Okay. A holiday in your kayak, doing a tour with it and the trailer. Sounds good. Peacock green, interesting. That's great, Travel Dreamer. I'm glad there was something out there for that exact purpose. But it sounds like, if it's working great, even for anyone that, that's not having hand or, wrist issues, that sounds like that's something that, would be good for everyone. Because the more comfortable you are at applying certain types of media, the more graceful it can be potentially. You know what I mean? I feel that when we're doing things in a nice ergonomic, comfortable motion, it reflects in the characteristics of the marks that we're making. So always change kind of the pieces that you're working on in a direction that's conducive to the mark you're doing. So see, right now, this for me is not going to be comfortable, with my hand, but my hand just naturally goes like this, and this is easy to do. So I'd rather see I'm moving my scene, my very large scene here, especially in a direction that's going to be very comfortable for that application of media. And then, kind of keep in mind your shoulders and things like that, that you're not kind of building up tension in your shoulders when working on things too. Sometimes you have to kind of keep, it has to be kind of like a, like a conscious effort. But then, I think after you do that a few times, you're not really thinking about it anymore. It just becomes more of the natural kind of motion. But anytime I'm working with something new, large pieces like this, different media on different surfaces, I'm always reminding myself of whatever posture, my hand, motion, direction. In other words, the more I have to think about something, when I'm using some new surface or something like that, combination of something, I'm kind of having to relearn it again. Or I might start, I'm, always thinking when I'm using something new, and then I'm kind of forgetting. It's not like a natural thing anymore. So, or as much. So every time I'm trying something new foil or something like that, I'm constantly reminding myself to, I don't know, whatever, to breathe too. Let it, when we're doing stuff, it's easy to forget about that and to kind of hold your breath. We should add some fireflies into this one. All right, so we're blending things out a little bit more. Things around here getting a little bit more resolved. All right, here's those, the greens and then the browns again that were used in here. Let's use some of that. Glad you like it, Jeannie. It's coming around slowly. I need a little bit more textural kind of, I don't know, variation in here. So tiny rocks, small. A couple little, I don't know, maybe winter twigs or something like that in there. Oh, I did. Where was it? Did I lose it again? Oh, here's my little reeds right here. Okay, I already added all that other stuff down. Where did it go? This one's a good one too, but I thought I had my... Oh, yeah. Here it is right here. I love this one right here. This is just bush, large right here, but these little craggy little elements like this. These areas in here can get a little bit, especially in grasses, it gets a little muddled sometimes. For me, it's a lot of times actually. So when that happens, it's like the paint pens, the white pigment ink coatings, but you can also remedy a lot of those areas with additional imagery, adding something crisp back into these areas right here. There's a lot of media that's been laid down on here, and it gets, it gets a little muddy sometimes with color, but also it's missing some sort of crisp elements in those areas, and that's where you can add that in with some additional imagery, like we did with reeds here, but those are kind of like a larger kind of element. This brown here is like a harder brown. It's not really transferring over. Okay, let me see on this one. This one's probably kind of hard too, or is it? The softer the pencil, the better the transfer, right? Onto smooth papers, at least. Okay, this is where I'm going in. Finally, I'm getting to some of those reed areas and just kind of blending those out a little bit, giving them a little bit of base. In other words, where these are coming out of the grass like that. See, I like to kind of anchor them down a little bit more with some tones. They're kind of coming out of a little bit of a darker area like that, and then coming out into that space. Let's see if I can show you right here. See this right here? I just kind of darken this in right there where those reeds are like coming out like that. Okay, and see this reed right here? I mean, this is like a little subtle thing. You just kind of anchor it down like that. Let me do it with black, though. Or you can create deeper shadows, where the texturing of this is. I'm just kind of reiterating it like that, giving this, these little areas in here a little bit more variation, and opposed to that just area being light like that. You kind of come into your areas where you can see this texture and just make it a little bit darker, because those are supposed to be shadows within kind of that grassy area. So you're just, you're just defining the shadows a little bit more. Okay. Giving these a little bit stronger of a right side shading, whatever lighting convention right over here, opposite the light source. Again, here again, anchoring down that those reeds, that grass right there. I can't even see this. It's like so much glare coming off of this. So I'm going in with the black and just loosely scribbling. I guess I'm putting on a pretty good coating of this in some areas. It kind of stands out a little bit. It's real scratchy, but I plan on, that black getting much darker when I reseal it. Okay, it's not going to look so flat. It'll look shiny and deeper. Okay, so this kind of scratchy kind of application of this wax that I can see right now, I think that'll disappear. I'm almost sure it will. So it'll just be darker on that edge. Okay. And it should blend in pretty good. So from your objects that are casting light, a little bit darker right at the base of them, and then you taper it off. So what that looks like in terms of an application looks like that, and then as I go down like that, it's just going like that. A little bit lighter, okay? So it gives them these objects visual weight, like that. This tree right here, I can make darker right here so that this portion of it, this tree in the foreground stands out more against it. So kind of oscillating, kind of light and dark right here. Same thing right here. Let's make this one really dark right here so that this foreground tree stands out against it a little bit more. Okay. Goes like that. This colored pencil's added a lot to it, huh? It really improved it. This black colored pencil it's really doing the job. Maybe I should just like black out everything, and maybe that'll look better. All right. let me see. I'm looking at my hand here to see if I, went through any of that wet ink up there. All right, let's take a look at this. Okay, so I have the all that colored pencil waxy kind of coating on there now. But those colored pencils helped out a lot, especially that light green and the black. I just don't think anything else other than StazOn is really going to stick on top of that surface very well. So let's go on with the StazOn, because I just know, StazOn's going to stick to that wax without any issue. Let's go with anytime you start soaking through like that, then rip yourself off a new mask. Like that. Okay, I don't want it too extreme. Let's go like that. All right, so let's see here. A little bit of extra texturing for, just some variation. All right, this is what I'm looking for right here. I need to be careful about that super wet ink up there. All right, this is Winter Brush right here. So these little branches like that really help out. And Jim's just breaking up the, again, it's just kind of breaking up the, I don't know, kind of that softer kind of textures that tend to happen, a lot of times when you're using just so much media in an area. So I like the richness of all the colors and everything like this in here. But again, it can look a little bit muddy in terms of I don't know, just the absence of anything crisp in there. Now we do have the reeds in here, and those are fine, but this is just such a large piece like this. It can really benefit from those nice crisp elements within that space for variation. All right, I think that is it with that. All right, I'm going to clean off this stamp before I let StazOn ink dry on my stamps too much. When I first started using the StazOn, and it's like it comes off so much easier. I just take it off with water when it's been freshly stamped, and it wipes right off. But if I let it sit, and use it like multiple times with the StazOn and then Brilliance or something like that, it really dries to like a crust. That takes a lot more time to take off, to remove. All right, so that is that. And all right, let's go with the my go-to texture on a lot of my different scenes in the rocks right here. These tiny rocks, small. See those little rocks in there? And doesn't that kind of give it a little bit more, I don't know, I guess visual variety in there? And like, especially like this area right here, that area right in there is just like a dud, you know, in terms of anything. I mean, I don't want it like exciting out here or anything like that because, you know, the attention is right over here. I don't want people, you know, this to be drawing attention out there. But if someone looks out there, you know, you don't want it to like be, you don't want it to be like completely boring. Not that, you know, looking at like 3 rocks in that area, like, you know, suddenly makes it exciting, but I don't know, just in terms of a little bit of a variation at least. Okay, now this is where I have to be careful that I just don't go kind of like hog wild with the with that texture stamp. You know, stamping it so much that it just like overpowers like the entire scene in terms of a, you know, a very visible common texture over everything. Okay, so that is that right there. All right. White and black, that's like one of the most important, 2 most important tones, huh? Prismacolor, that's good for that. All right. Okay, now here's my little trick here, okay? It doesn't matter what color scheme you're doing, and I usually do this with any type of color scheme I'm working with, some kind of like warm bluish tinge like this. Okay, it could be a sunset scene in all warm tones or something like that. Okay. A little bit of this tinge, if you've retained some areas of white, okay, within your piece. Yeah, it's really changed, hasn't it, Linda? You saw how ugly it got, and that's why I really pointed it out, right? Especially down in the forest floor area, okay? See those preliminary kind of ugly periods as kind of your base coats for, and it's really comes together in the shadows for you, like in the darkest couple colors. Okay, but going on with this right here, see, I have a little bit of white down here, and I'm going to bring in this little bit of this bluish tinge. I don't know if you can see it. I'll go a little bit more extreme for you. Here. Not like super extreme, but see, I don't know if you can tell that little tinge of blue right down in here. But especially with this blue area up top, it's giving it a little bit of continuity to that. But and see, like right on here, I mean, there's some blue in there anyways, because I brought in some of that Caribbean blue down this area. But this little touch like this, I really like this look. Like I said, even in warm tone scenes, I do that oftentimes. It just, I don't know, it just kind of gives it a little bit of a jewel-like touch, having that little bit of a, I don't know what it is with this color right here. It's like an aquamarine or something like that in here. It's just, I don't know, it's just like a cheerful color, I guess. You know, like a, you know, like a blue sky, right? You know, in terms of the emotional quality of it. A little bit more black. I should go spray seal this so you can see it right here. But no, okay, this is what I'm thinking it'll look like when spray sealed. Okay, because this is picking up the glare of all my, you know, the inks and colored pencils and whatnot. But that's what it should look like when spray sealed. Okay, you know, with in terms of all the saturation and whatnot. Let me see. I think we can go a little bit darker up on that ridge right there. Oh, I almost forgot. Let's add a little bit of a shadow being cast by this deer. Like that. See that little shadow at the base of the deer like that? It kind of anchors the deer into the setting. Okay, let's go with... Okay, so this is just right now. This is like up until this point. Everything right here is just basically a base coat for the paint pen work. No, I'm just joking. We're coming up into the final kind of touches here. All right, folks, we're at the midway point of the scene. All right. Let's go with some green tones. What else? Definitely white. Okay. We won't go extreme with this. I'm not going to grab, 20 colors out of this, but let's do something like this. Is that a little bit too... I want it like a tan. I've got stuff falling all over the place here. All right. These two colors look exactly the same. This one's a little bit more warm. This one's a little bit more peach. I'm looking through my Artistro pen set. Okay, so we have a lot of different options right here. So you know what I mean? We chose, a lot of different values of and temperatures of the different inks, all right? The dye-based inks. And we did the same thing with the colored pencils, and you're just doing the same thing with, whatever media that you're working through. Now, I think this looks fine as is, but, I think it looks better, to add in, some other types of touches into here. If you have the stuff, if you don't have it, then you're done. Looks great. Move on to the next piece. But here's like some 3mm pens right now. I'm not going to use these ones, but maybe right in here. I don't know. Maybe we'll keep it nice and subtle. And here. But let's try these ones right here. Okay. So light and dark versions. And then we also have the brown tones in here. Lighter version that is like tan. And then white. Tiny rocks help out a lot. So right down there. They also kind of add a little bit of shading down here if I add them in mass. But that looks yucky with all that glare of light coming off of it. That looks so much better without all that glare coming off of my camera. Here, let me try something too. Let me just change the... I'm going to drop my... exposure just to neutral. I jack it up, in the beginning because I'm working all on a white piece of paper, and my camera has to compensate for all that glare coming off of here, but this is all dark right now. I used to do mushrooms on this one. I thought about it, Jeannie, but I wanted to keep this one real simple. I thought, I'm going to be doing this huge. So a lot of times I use these big mushrooms from a 100 proof press, so it looks like kind of a worm's eye view of this scene. Or you're saying these could be mushrooms. Those could be. You can add it in with the paint pen down here like that. Jeannie always sees shrooms. Oh, you said mushrooms, right? I didn't think about these. Here's some smaller trees with the leafless pines in here. Too busy. Okay, if I didn't add all these little elements down there, I think I would have done that. Okay, I might not do it. I might just go in with this lighter here. So let's use these paint pens to represent lighting and highlighting, I guess. Okay. Okay, so I roughly start adding these little elements down where the paint pen is roughly the same value as the colors that have already been applied. Okay, so that's where I start off. So they're not real visible at first. And then I move into areas where they stand out a little bit more. So, okay, so it's kind of a light color like that. Okay. And then I'll bring it in this case, into the darker area. Okay. Like that, to just make those little areas kind of shimmer a little bit. I don't want it too much in a really light area because it'll look like green little dots like that, But I just want it to look like little reflective, like something on the surface is reflecting that light, okay? And the areas that are pretty dark, it kind of stands out a little bit. I'm putting it into this area to get rid of that little ugly kind of brown stain. Like that. Okay, but this is the green one. The white is going to be much more... the white is going to be much more visible because there's going to be more contrast. But, if you have different values, then why not use them? Okay, so let me see if I can show you here. So I don't know if you can see it. Darn it. These are just so small on here. Let's see. Okay, that's right, teetering right before this camera goes out of focus here. Let's see, we'll come in here. Don't go in too far in here because this is the shadows right here, right? But see how it kind of brings these little areas to life like that. I used to do this all with white, but then they came out with like pastel paint pens. Then I had like 3 to choose from or something like that. 3, purple, pink. Oh, there was like tan, and maybe there was more colors. Maybe it was like 5. But now it's like any kind of color scheme that you have, you can represent that colored light, with, a huge array of different colors. The one color that I wish, there was some color that was missing though. I think it was like an intermediate brown. Yeah. I don't have like a brown, like this color brown right here. Every time I think it's a brown and I grab it out of here like that, that looks brown to me, but this one's a gold pen. So they're missing brown. I don't know, maybe that's not people's like favorite color to, to use or something like that, just with, in like adult coloring books and whatever that, these are kind of the target audience for these pens are. But yeah, in scenic stamping, we can use a brown, and it just doesn't really exist. Not in the Artistros set, at least. All right, so adding that down there. So it's kind of those little light little areas like that. See, it's kind of, I started in the lighter area, then you bring it into those darker areas and just kind of peter it out like that. But see, it's kind of creating this, I guess it's a sharper texture too, but it's making this area kind of shimmer with light. It's supposed to look like little sparkly little, specular light, which is all those little things that on objects are reflecting that light like that. Like on my knuckles right here, are illuminated like that. So that's what this is doing. You're adding all these little sparkly touches on things that, everything around us, if you take that out, it's missing some of that, that lighting or that three-dimensional aspect of it. So this is really fun stuff. It can really add a ton to a scene. If you've never done this before, like highlighting like this with the white pen or just any type of paint pen, just be aware that when you add a few little dots in one area of a piece, it's going to look kind of weird because it's not consistent throughout, the area where it's representative of a certain type of look or, effect. So you have to kind of add it around and it'll become more of a common element. So see, I'm adding it into this illuminated area over here so that it becomes representative of what you're intending it for. So in this case, it's, reflecting little, I don't know, whatever, dew or something like that on the grass. And see out here, this area is really dark, so let me grab that darker pen. I wasn't going to use this one, but see, there's not really any lighting hitting this area, you know what I mean? It's dark, so, but you can have a little bit of variation, I think, in here using the darker green. It's not creating so much contrast by having a lighter version of it. So you can add these little touches in here. It's just more subtle because it's kind of, a medium darker tone on top of an even darker tone. So, okay, you can't see that at all, but I don't know, there's little dots in here. You can kind of see it right there. Okay, I put it right in here and right in there. Okay, it's very subtle. Yeah, let me try this right here. Let me use some of this in my darker areas too, just to get a little bit more texturing in here. Oh, on tops of the rocks, for, to represent lichen or something of that sort. That'd be kind of cool. Like I said, you can use we can add in like little glowing little dots in here. Maybe not in this scene. I was thinking about it. Maybe I'd do it another one. But if you had little dots in here, like little green light, and put a little glowing little diffusion of, with pigment ink over the top of it, it looks like fireflies, which are really fun. Okay, let's bring some of this onto these, this rock down here. Okay. The ideal number of dots per square inch is about 15.2, by the way. So just remember to keep counting as you're applying the dots so that you don't go like to 16 per square inch. No one write that down. Okay, here's a little bit of that blue, that kind of that jewel tone blue, like with the the colored pencil. Let's do that, down here. All right. Ooh, I like that blue. I don't know if I've done this before with the this blue, this little aqua blue. Unless it was a blue scene, but this looks really awesome. I wish you guys can see it. Imagine little blue, imagine your, you can see it a little bit right in here. This can just represent lighting on here, but it can also represent, if you go with like a pink or something like that, which I'll probably do, you can have little clusters of little wildflowers in an area. It's starting to get a little bit busy with the number of dots that I've applied because I'm going a little bit overboard. But it's starting to shimmer a little bit more. Okay, but that's where the white paint, pigment ink will come into play. And it mellows out a lot of that, though, so you can kind of go semi-extreme here. This is like the most important passage of the scene, though. Start counting, Travel Dreamer. We're gonna have a contest of whoever can, name the number of dots that were applied onto this scene. I've been keeping count. And it's not whoever comes close, whoever gets the exact amount, and one entry per, one guess, per person. All right, here comes the white, and white, of course, is going to be the most visible because, it has the most amount of contrast, so I'm kind of building it out from the light areas like this, okay? The areas where there's still a little bit of white, the white of the paper, peeking through a little bit. Okay. If I put my hand there, that's all wet up there still. I need to be careful about that. Not exactly, super engaging live stream viewing here, I know. Someone applying dot by dot, 3,000, you know, dots that you can't even see. But hopefully you can kind of get the gist of it in terms of, I don't know, maybe the textural quality. You can see, some of those little dots throughout here, I think, especially in the white here. This area right in here is really light still, so I can apply some of it right on those ridges right here. This is the area right in here where I thought about using the 3mm paint pens, but I don't know, it's not so bold in there. It's still, I know this is a really huge scene, but it's still, I don't know, it's reasonably delicate as far as, I don't know, the different textures in here, so I don't want to go too bold. I go bolder when I'm using things like the, like the autumn scenes or, with a lot of, super bright leaves and stuff. All right, so let's see if we can do this right here. I'm trying to, well, maybe I should do this not in the white, but I'll go back to this tan. Did I use this tan already? I don't think I did. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of highlighting onto these trees. Not everywhere because they got really dark because I had to go dark, just to block off that transition between the green down here and the blue up in the sky that, was showing through. So everything got really dark on this scene, but I just want to go in and add in a few of these little lighting, I don't know, whatever cues. To reiterate that lighting direction. Okay, now what occurred to me is that that moon is kind of a little bit warmer, so I don't know if using this color here, maybe I should be using white because that moon is a little bit white. And I should be using the same color onto these trees. This one's just it's just a more subtle color, you know, because it's darker, but still a little warm. Okay, I'm not going to do too much with that because this is really standing out. The contrast between this and that background is really extreme here. Let me try to, I'm going to mute some of that right there a little bit. You can add the stuff on here and just, you can color over the top of it and it will color the acrylic paint on there too. Here, let me try it with the white here. So I'll go in with a little bit of this white here. It's going to be a razor thin kind of application of this, I think. You know, because we're saying here with this trunk so dark like that, we're saying that there's not a lot of light hitting it. So I just want to define the edge slightly to pull it out from the background just a little bit more than how it is right now. Okay, so you see it right, like right here and here. That's a little bit too light right there, but, and let's put one little bit of that lighting right here. Like that, okay. So let's see, that's what that looks like that. So I'm just kind of wiping some of that off so it's not so stark white like that. That's a little bit better. Okay, and that is that with the white? I oftentimes add it to like foreground reeds and stuff like that, but I don't want to do that here. Things will just get way too textural. Okay, so now we're going to bring it all together with this white pigment ink, and that should be that. Stamping doesn't alter your mind, though, Jeannie? Maybe not chemically, except everything natural, huh? What about caffeine? Oh, good, Jeannie. You're stamping while watching. Cool, cool. All right, here comes the white pigment ink. We have a pretty large area in here, so let's see how this goes. I see the perfect spot for it, and it's going to be right up around the deer, around on the moon too. We'll soften up some of those areas in there. And maybe that's where I'll start with this. I'll give that moon a little bit more of a glowing kind of soft light, I hope. Okay. Kind of a dry brush effect. This isn't sopping wet here with ink. Okay, you see that top of that cloud right in there. Everyone likes kind of a soft light. Usually, what is it? Everything's LED. Now, but back, whatever, even a couple years ago, if you go in and if you have a choice of light bulb replacements that you're buying, are you buying the soft white ones? Are you buying, just the regular? I'd typically go for the soft white. But just in terms of a textural change now, this white is, we're lightening up an area with a little bit of this white pigment ink, but we're also adding in that a huge amount of difference in terms of the textures, the textural range, I guess you can say, of the entire scene by adding in that soft element like that. Okay. Look at that. Does that moon look like it's glowing now? Okay, and let's see here. Let's do something here. Let's mask off a little bit of this, like this. And we'll put this little deer here, or distant one, and a little bit of this soft glowing light as well. Right around at the feet and legs like that. Oops, sorry. I was almost working off screen like that. And then we'll add that around and throughout the piece. Anywhere where there's a little bit of, illumination and light, we'll add in that little haze and in various whatever degrees or applications. Some will be a little bit thinner. You can do, thicker applications if you want. And this white ink is going to dry more see-through and therefore darker than what it looks like when it's been freshly applied, so keep that in mind. And then when you spray seal it too, it kind of gets a little bit more transparent then too, so it really kind of mutes out a lot, which can be good sometimes, sometimes you don't want to lose it, just like pastels. If you put something, a light pastel over a dark one and you spray seal it, sometimes you lose that little highlighting and whatnot, because the lighter pastel over the darker one, it just disappears. But same type of thing with this pigment ink here. See that little passage of soft light on that, like just at the base of that trunk right there. And we have this area right in here. Okay. If you soften up too many of the images down here, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't even see them anymore. Everything looks too soft. You can always put kind of a band of this kind of mist down here and see where it's kind of getting, a little bit more obscured. If you want a crisp impression right over the top of it, then you can just stamp another one right over on top of it, so you have kind of this softer look. And then you have a crisp, like in this case, reed stamp, or whatever you put right over the top of that. You can have crisp, soft, right in that space right there too. I really like this area right in here, how that looks right in there. I'm applying that I'm kind of rubbing into it, removing a little bit too. So if you were stamping Paranoid, then Jeannie, what would you think? You know, there's a if you were stamping while on, you know, like super paranoid, it's like there's a blue conspiracy, you know. Or you know, those leaves did that to me on purpose. Would that type of kind of those thoughts come to mind? You know, come into play. Stamping paranoia. We want to see that. Do a live stream in that state. That'd be cool. Everyone log on to Jeannie's channel. It's going to be the psychotropic, or is that the word? Stamping channel. Okay, let's see. I'm adding more up here. Kind of, you know, a little bit darker and lighter in the background like that. Or I guess more illumination back in that area, closer to the light source. As this gets a little bit drier, again, it's getting more see-through and thus darker, so just keep adding more accordingly. All right, let's see how this is looking just kind of overall. Right in here. Okay, I think that is, let me add a little bit over here. Just a little touch of it, because it does get a little bit light right over there anyway. Any excuse to add a little bit of extra texture, textural range, lighting range, you know, contrast. Contrasts of different types. It's light against dark, it's soft against crisp, you know. Sometimes it controls distance, you know, you put something more kind of obscured and, you know, a little bit of this fog, mist. It can look farther back in the distance. Okay, I'm just kind of pushing that moon a little bit back, a little bit farther visually, by making that a little bit lighter, because you know, the deer stands out against it a little bit more so now, like that. See where it's kind of like soft and lighter against dark and crisp, at least in its head. All right, I think that should do it here. Contemplation. I'm going in. I'm going to add in some lupin in here, like little wildflowers in here. This doesn't really stand out too much, I don't think. It, I mean, you could, depending on where you place it, but I'm just going to put in a few little groupings of this purple flower in here, okay? But I'll add it in to areas where there's not too much of a, value difference. Maybe this is too subtle. It's barely visible. Okay, this is like a violet right here. I'm kind of clustering it right in here. This is one of those things. Okay, it's going to be very subtle, but I'll add in some pink within these clusters, so it'll look like a little bit of pink purplish little touches. It's one of those things that'll just be nice and a little, I don't know, a little bit of a variation in there. Okay, here's pink right here. I'd like to see what colors you would use. Jeannie, your pieces are already... Okay, so you'd be going from what I call your pieces stamp expressionism into, you'd be doing stamping, maybe you'd be moving into your... See, you went through your... I don't know what you'd call that pattern type of, where you were just stamping things in like multiple patterns and things like that, the same imagery. That was like your pop art period. Now you're into like stamp expressionism. If you were on like mushrooms or something like that or whatever, you'd be doing like stamp surrealism probably. That would be your surrealist period. We'll call you Jeannie Siegel Dolly. Okay, here's a little bit of pink right in here. Okay. And I cluster this. I'm not putting it like, everywhere, like uniformly. I just kind of cluster it in certain areas. Yeah, like pink's kind of a happy color for sure too. But it could be in there, but it could be very subtle if you want to. If you put it more in some of the white areas, it'll stand out a little bit more. Or in the dark areas, but you can kind of keep it over in areas that are just roughly the same value again, and you just kind of spread it out a little bit. And, it just looks like a slightly different colored texture in here. All right, I don't know if you can see, there's like little tinges of that pink throughout there. But see, when you look at it like that, it's, it's not very, visible, but see like that, those little pink little areas here, it is here, here, here. You know what I mean? It's just so it's not just so green in there anymore. And then green and pink, they kind of, they harmonize naturally with each other, certain values of them, right? Like you've seen that color scheme that got really popular out there for a while that was like browns and pinks and light blue, that type of thing. I mean, we're not trying to go for this like trendy color scheme or something like this. You see these types of colors out in nature a lot, greens and these little flowers out there like this happening. So we're just kind of referencing nature in many ways. Let me put a few down in here. And I think we are done with the base coat. No. I think that is it. Let's take a look at this piece. All right, so I used less white on this than what I thought I would, and I could sometimes, I feel like, adding some highlighting onto some of these leaves. But again, I think that might be a little bit overkill with the amount of dots that I placed down in this portion down here. You know, I think it might be a little bit too much, but there we have it. Moon and the forest floor. Grande. So this will be spray sealed, but I think, you know, that's about as like saturated as it's going to get right there. You know, here it is. I don't know if you can tell, it's very flat looking down there, but you know, when you spray seal it, it cuts across a lot of that that matte look, that matte finish to a lot of the inks that inks have. And it should get that dark like that, I would think. I'm not sure exactly because we've used, you know, a lot of different combinations of media here, but hopefully you see that down here, that little area is kind of a little shimmery. I think the colored pencils helped a lot, and, you know, which I haven't been doing a lot over the years, but these little craggy little branches in here help a lot. And then you add that texturing back in here. And again, when it's like this grassy field, you know what I mean? If you're adding like tons of different media in there, especially dye-based inks or wet media, it tends to get muddled, okay? But if you don't get that layering on there, it's just, you know, I mean, it won't be quite as rich and varied in here. So, I mean, not that you have to use like the amount of ink I used. I used a ton of it in here, like for my trees and everything like that. See the variation in there? But when it gets muddy, you just add your crisp elements right back over the top of it. And then when things get a little bit too kind of sharp and textural like that, then you go in and you just mute out some of it again with that soft element. So you have softness and kind of a muddy area. Then you go crisp, and then you go soft again, just revising that, okay? And see some of these areas, you know, there's some soft little reeds and these crisper ones around there. It all kind of adds to an overall kind of range of a whatever textural range. It's lighting too, so it's dark and light in there as well. So, yeah. Bright yellow are dandelions. You can eat them, right? I do like fog. Fog does a lot of things. It pushes textures, it pushes distance, visual distance in things, it varies the surface, it obscures the things that you want obscured, and sometimes it can, by doing so, it enhances the things that, you know, that are crisp, that are good. So, yeah. I don't know, yeah, maybe your wine, what would you wine and rubber, that's the name of your channel, Linda, where you have like a different wine of the week or something like that. And then you can see if, you know, going with the different types of wines affects your stamping or the colors that you choose, you know, or something like that. Does reds, you know, do you feel different on the reds than, you know, white? Maybe with whites, you're stamping more like, I don't know, like, you know, seafood or something like that. Sea oceans and whatnot. And, you know, with the reds, you're stamping out, you know, whatever, like cows and mammals. Yeah. Yeah, Picasso. Was it Cubist, the blue period? Rose period? Was that the other one? Yeah, I like his blue period too. Wasn't so much into like cubism, you know, but the blue period, yeah. I like the blue period the best. Okay, yeah. Thanks for joining in, everyone. Dandelions are your favorite flowers. That's cool. I took a photograph of one of my favorite photographs in recent years was the, just a close up of the, you know, the seeded, you know, little thing. And I happened to get a really good picture of it like that. But, yeah. Yeah, we're waiting for that travel, you know, we're waiting for those two channels, Linda. Wine and rubber. That's your other, you create another account Wine and Rubber with Linda B. And the Jeannie's going to be her surrealist stamping. There, it's alliteration. Surrealism and stamping surrealism. How about that? Scenic stamping surrealism. You're gonna have like trees, like melting and stuff like that. Yeah. Anyway, I really like this scene right here. I'm trying to think of, as I was working on this one, I was wondering if it was my favorite piece with the foamies so far. I like my redwood ones too, but and the pieces on the vinyl, but this one right here, there's something to be said for having these big options like this to really push depth. I was planning on, doing the smaller trees in the distance, so maybe I should do that one. But instead of having like this moon here, I'll have like another row of trees in the background. But can you imagine having like a thing this size and these trunks going from this size to a really small version of it in the background, and then they have those, these crepuscular rays coming through here like that? I think that would be really dramatic. Even if it was just in black and white, I think that would be kind of cool. But I've always done those, those light beams going through things, but I think it would be even more just in terms of the distance and size of those rays, going through, a huge, piece. I've done it on, I guess I've done them on the full page scenes once in a while, like this one that had the waterfalls and stuff like that and the trees up above, but just having all trees and then having those crepuscular rays in there, and then really having like the shadows of all the trees reiterated in shadow, but then you'd have the white beams coming through there at the same kind of whatever angles and everything like that. I think that would be pretty amazing to try. So, yeah. All right, folks. Let's see here. This is such a huge piece right here. These live streams always grabs the like the last like minute or two of the live stream for the thumbnails, unless I'm creating the thumbnails myself. But when it does that just automatically, it's just so much more convenient here. Let me see here. I need to get that glare off of there. Here we go, like that. Okay. Moon in the Forest Floor. I don't know what it's like a 4.0 or something like that. I did my first version of this about, it's probably been 20 years or something like that. And that one is one of the few scenes that I've ever submitted for Rubber Stamp Madness. I don't remember what it was for, what the theme of it was, but usually doing it with like those mushrooms in there, so... And those are kind of fun. And I'd have this tree kind of on its side like this, and you can have like a worm on it or a caterpillar or something like that. Makes it a little bit more whimsical. And I think if I did something like that, if I had those mushrooms in here, I'd do those little glowing orbs, in here. They could be fireflies or something like that, or little, what do you call them, wisps or something like that. Yeah. Let me get these out of the scene right here. If it grabs the thumbnail for that. Looks like, yucky rags. Like that. Frogs would be good. If it, with the mushrooms around in here, we can do like a little body of water too. I'd use the pond in here. There's a little body of water in here too. That'd be good. That'd be a good idea. Or you can have something coming out of the water too, Even more whimsical. All right, folks. Thanks for checking out this long live stream. Had so much fun all, and out. All right, everyone. Thanks so much again. Yeah, fun with Foamies Friday. Hope to see you on the next scene. I went big with this one because I've been going small with the little scraps, I guess. So I'll have to go after this one here, like I said in that previous video. Maybe we'll use like the inchies or something like that. People do a little mosaic, I think. I want to do something like that. So anyways, thanks again, everyone.